Hey, and welcome back to another video. This is the 7th episode of the narrative, which takes place 3 years after the war with the Akatsuki, and Naruto is ready to gain a surprising new colleague to finally take the Chunnin examinations. Please support by liking and subscribing. Let's start the show. Naruto showed up at training ground 36 late again. Konohamaru was practicing his summoning jutsu with 4 clones. "Hey Konohamaru," he said in a dreary mood with a rather large bump on his head. He looked over at him for a moment and then pointed to his bump and laughed. "What happened to you? Did you piss off Hanabi again?" Naruto's eyes narrowed at him. "No, this is the reason you shouldn't drink with the Hokage," he said, clearly unamused. He stopped in mid-laugh. "No way! How did she trick you into drinking with her? I thought you of all people would know better." Naruto turned away and quietly replied. "I was the one drinking, she joined me, Hanabi found out about Kyuubi and I'm not sure what's going to happen next." He gave him a concerned look. "You seem a bit down about it. I take it her reaction wasn't that great then?" He nodded his head. "Yes and no. By the way, using shadow clones to learn the summoning jutsu isn't going to help you here." He looked at his clones and back to Naruto. "I thought something was off when I couldn't summon anything with clones, but if I blow all my chakra in one shot to get a summons then I can't practice for the rest of the day. You need to have all your chakra in one body. Did you summon anything yesterday?" he asked. He got a very embarrassed look on his face before admitting. "Yeah, I blew all my chakra in one shot again." Naruto gave him a curious look. "And what did you summon?" "That damn diaper monkey again." He fumed. "Tell me you didn't try to attack him again?" he asked, dreading the answer. Konohamaru gave him a foreboding look before saying, "Kami, no, after I saw what I summoned, I ran for it." Naruto gave him a strange look while he drew up a mental picture of him summoning the small monkey and then freaking out and running in fear. Naruto hit the ground laughing. "Hey, cut it out. It's not funny," he said as he stomped his foot in frustration. "Well, it's better than what I summoned when I first started, ha ha ha." Konohamaru dispelled his clones and crossed his arms waiting for Naruto to laugh himself out. After Naruto had calmed down he asked, "Hey, what did you summon?" "I was summoning tadpoles for 3 weeks," he admitted. "Tad.poles. Haha, you're pathetic," he stated. Naruto was still smiling at him. "Yeah, well, my tadpoles didn't beat me up and now I can summon the 2 elder frog sages." "Erg, what am I doing wrong here? Give me a hint at least," he begged. Naruto thought about it for a moment before getting to his feet. "Well, when you sign a summoning contract you must realize they are only required to come when called. They aren't required to help you. You're going to have to earn their trust and respect first," he stated wisely. Konohamaru closed his eyes and thought for a moment. His look went to annoyed then to rage. He snapped his eyes open and said, "Ergh. It's no use. Every time I see that little monkey's face I become infuriated. And he thinks he's got it rough. No wonder Jiraiya threw me off that cliff." Naruto thought sarcastically. "That's all you get. The rest is just the guts to keep trying it until you've mastered it," he said. Konohamaru scowled at his back as he walked away to do his training. Konohamaru kept trying until lunchtime and only managed to summon a monkey smaller than the last one that could only suck its thumb. He panted on the ground. "At least it's not trying to throw crap at me," he said, trying to catch his breath. "Okay Konohamaru, let's go get lunch and remember no training tomorrow. We start the Chunnin exams on Monday," Naruto said. He got up and started to follow him. "How long do you think it will be before she gets over the fear of realizing that thing in you isn't going away? I kind of miss our sparring match. My taijutsu was getting better." Naruto shrugged his shoulders. "I don't know, but she was still peeking at us during training. I hope it's before Monday so we can take the exams together." Konohamaru nodded his head as he followed Naruto to get some ramen. Hanabi jumped down from a tree at the back of the training area and sighed. I just don't know how I feel about him anymore. That thing in him was the scariest thing I could ever imagine. She said sadly. You know, Naruto has been a hero of this village long before he was named a hero. Hanabi, Niji said from a nearby tree. Every day he breathes is another day that he holds that demon inside of him. He is himself in spite of everything the world has thrown at him. He is a man I truly strive to be like. She looked at Niji. You know, at this moment, I wish Uncle would have been born first. I'd rather have the bird in a cage curse on me and be able to be with him than to be the heiress without him. I still can't figure out all these messed up feelings, she said while looking at the ground as she crossed her arms close to her body. Niji looked up into the clear cloudless sky and said, You know, for the longest time I thought I should be the heir too, but I'm not so sure anymore. She looked over at him. It's always been clear you should have been the heir, even I see that. What made you unsure of it? Niji gave her a slight laugh while thinking about a memory. When you beat Lord Hyuga in that sparring match using Naruto's shadow clone jutsu, he said. Even I have never put your father on his rear in a sparring match. No matter how hard I tried. He is just too good. Every time I try something new he beats me down with the basic. When I try to refine my basics to his level he only shows me how much farther I have to go when he beats me again. She looked at his with a sour look. I just caught him off guard that he wasn't expecting the shadow clone jutsu, she stated. He smiled at her and said, It doesn't matter if you only won a single time. If it would have been real combat you could have killed him. It only takes one mistake and then it's over, he said knowingly. How long did it take for you to accept him after you found out? She asked him with slumped shoulders. I can honestly say it was the first time I saw it come out of him. The way he was fighting it and trying to save a man that was sealed with the Nine Tails chakra as well. He saved that man and expelled the chakra in him so that he could lead a normal life. I saw the day that he was fighting it, he wasn't the Nine Tails, but he struggled against it. He told her. She sighed. I guess I need more time. I wish this could have happened after the exams. I need to keep training, yet I'm scared of my sensei, she said while they fidgeted and looked at the ground. Niji looked at her for a moment. I almost thought to call you a coward, but I have to admit that I understand. It will take time. She thought for a moment. Hey, why don't you train me for today? She asked intently. He suddenly seemed on guard yet he did not move. Is that a order? He said carefully. She went wide-eyed for a moment. No! Of course not. She was all too aware she could order him to train her, but even her father asked Niji to do things. He hadn't ordered anyone in the lower branch family to do anything since Niji's fight with Naruto. Good, he said while smiling at her. Your basics in your form are still sloppy and you get hot-headed and make mistakes. I will not train you even for a day. I'm far too curious to see what kind of shinobi Naruto is going to turn you into, and so far I'm impressed. You do know who has the basics down the best, don't you? She rolled her eyes. Yes, but Father is too busy to train me. He gave her a stern look. No, it's not Lord Hyuga. I'll give you a hint. Green. She thought about it for a moment before getting a foreboding look and hanging her head. That you've got to be kidding me, not the eyebrow freaks again. I'm still stuffing my brains back into my ears from the last time he used his poke attack on me. He smiled at her. The very same, besides Naruto there is no one that trains harder than those two. I'm not going to mess with his training of you. Lee is a lot like him. He would be good substitute for Naruto until you've had time to sort out your feelings. She got an unhappy look on her face. I just hate sparring with Lee. He makes me feel so inferior to him. He nodded his head a few times. I feel that way too when I fight him. I used to beat him with ease. Now I can hardly call myself his equal. She stared at him in shock. But you're a Jonin and he's only a Chunnin under your command in your squad? He smiled and then he chuckled. True, But what good is my gentle fist against him? Sealing his chakra will do me no good, and now his heart is true. I can't make him doubt himself, nor am I fast enough to block him. Do not be so caught up on our ranks. The person that judges Naruto as a Chunnin would be in for a nasty surprise when facing him. He told her. She nodded her head a few times. The rock, the paper, or the scissors? She replied. He smiled honestly at her. You see, your sensei has taught you well. Besides, you heard him. No training tomorrow, you might as well overdo it today just like he always does, he said with a knowing smile. She headed over to their training ground and could hear a sound that made her wince every time she heard it. Ha! Followed by the crack of a fist on solid wood. She was almost to the clearing and she rubbed her forehead that stung from just remembering. She stepped out onto the training ground and Lee was there alone striking a wooden post over and over. Hello, Lee, she said respectfully with a bow. Ha! He stopped in mid-punch as he looked over at her curiously. Hanabi, what are you doing here? The exams are in 2 days. Shouldn't you be training with Naruto? He asked. She lifted her head out of the bow and went to say something, but Lee cut her off. Lee's eyes turned to fire and his fist quivered in front of him. Finally! A girl has fallen for me. I'll have a real girlfriend at least. Happy day, he said as he danced around like a ballerina. Hanabi's face faltered and she fell over. What the hell are you talking about? She yelled, instantly getting to her feet and pointing a quivering finger at him. She stood there in stunned silence. Oh my ducky is just like Naruto, that he totally puts me off my guard, she thought. Guy-sensei appeared out of nowhere and clocked Lee over the head. Lee! Never make a pass at another man's woman. Lee got a horrified look on his face and said, I'm sorry, sensei. I was not making a pass as you say, it was a misunderstanding. Hanabi held her head in her hands. I can believe I came here to ask you two to train me for the day, she said in dismay. Oh, you are here to train with us on your last day of training before the exams. Naruto is truly smart leaving you in our care, Guy-sensei said with his double thumbs up and gleaming smile. She sighed and slumped her shoulders. Naruto didn't send me, Niji suggested you guys. Guy and Lee held each other in an uncomfortable-to-watch hug with rivers of tears falling out of their eyes. You hear that, Lee? He said. Yes, I did, sensei. The Hyuga clan wants us to train their heiress, Lee stated emotionally. You grossed, I don't even want to know, she thought in disgust as she looked away. Actually, I found out about the 9-tailed fox being sealed inside of him and I am just too confused to train with him today, she admitted while hanging her head. Guy looked at her for a moment and said, I see. Then let's get to training. Lee gave him a confused look and asked, But sensei, shouldn't we? Quietly, she wants to lose herself in her training. She's trying to take out her frustration in her training. You still have a lot to learn when it comes to understanding people, he told him quietly. Yes, sensei, Lee replied. Guy said, in a much kinder voice. This time when it stings, keep going, when it bleeds, keep going, when it starts to truly hurt, stop. Otherwise you will break bones like you did last time. Remember, we don't have a medic here like Naruto this time, he warned. She got a confused look on her face. You talk of him like he's Tsunade. He even told me he hardly compares, she stated. Guy smiled at her and said, actually he is nothing like her. Naruto has so much chakra that even if he fails to heal a wound he can try over and over until he gets it right, he stated. Okay, Guy-sensei, she replied. You know the routine, 2,000 punches and 2,000 kicks, but before that, Hanabi, come here, he said as he pulled out some bandages from his pouch. She walked over to him and he tied them around her hands. This will protect your hands and will help you train longer. I don't know why you wouldn't be wearing them already, he said. Father doesn't use them, so I never use them. He says they can weaken our gentle fist even if they do protect the hands. She replied. Well, you'll need them today, he said honestly as he wrapped her hands in the bandages. She managed to get through her 2,000 punches without breaking any fingers and fell on her back panting. I can't believe you do this every day, she stated. Guy smiled at her and said, Actually, we do 8,000, we only cut the number back because you're here. She was just getting back to her feet when she fell back over in dismay. You've got to be kidding me, 8,000? She eventually pulled herself up and started on her kicks. She made it to just over 1,600 before collapsing. I can't go one, it just hurts too much, she panted. Well, you are doing better than last time. Your stamina is better and you didn't break anything. Take a few minutes to rest up. Then you'll be sparring with Lee for the last hour, he stated, and she flinched. She got into fighting form with Lee and they sparred. Lee had to remind her to keep her eyes open when fighting several times. She kept closing them when Lee attacked in fear of his dreadful poke attack. Lee constantly kept telling what she was doing wrong in her gentle fist attacks and defenses. Unlike last time, she didn't get mad. She was intently trying to land a blow on him, but never succeeded to hit the nimble fighter. Guy finally said, Okay, it's time to get cleaned up and get dinner. But Sensei, we are quitting early today? Lee said, clearly disappointed. Guy wiped his face with his hand and gave Lee a tired look. Lee, Hanabi can't keep going as long as we can. I wanted her to feel like she completed a day of training with us. That was until you opened you big trap, he stated. Lee wore a very strained look and said, I'm sorry, Sensei, I guess I am not as smart as you. He was bowing on the ground in front of him. Come on, it's off to the baths, Guy said while walking away with Lee in tow. Hanabi stood there blankly, not knowing what to do. She certainly didn't want to take a bath with two other men. Come on, Hanabi. You supposed to be escorted around by a guard of Chunnin rank or higher, he said over his shoulder. I came here by myself though, she said. That's because there was a Umbu guard following you. He has long since left. Now hurry up or no dinner. She snapped to attention and hurried to catch up to them. Hanabi had never been to a public bath house, but was relieved when she found out it wasn't a co-ed bath. They were in a long wood floor hallway with two doorways covered in a curtain. One had a symbol of a man and the other had a picture of a woman. Okay, you go in there, Hanabi, and we will be over on this side. Just yell if you get into any trouble, Guy Sensei said. Lee rushed into the men's side and Hanabi heard him yell, Cannonball. A great splash could be heard before Guy said, Hey! No fair getting started without me, boy. Guy darted off, followed by a louder splash. Hanabi nervously went into the woman's side of the bath and undressed. She wrapped a towel around herself and headed out to the hot spring bath. The spring was cut in half with a sturdy-looking wooden wall. The waters were a milky green and steam slowly rose of the top of its surface in lazy laps of clouds. Hanabi slowly lowered herself into the water. Leaf-style water shock wave attack. She heard Lee say, and she heard another thunderous roar of water, then a splash. To slow Lee. Water striking shot, Guy said, and she heard a loud strike on the water was heard, followed by a crash. Do not get comfortable, Sensei. I will not fall for that trick again, Lee said. So afterward a loud crash could be heard again. I will not fall for it a third time, Sensei. Hanabi was eyeing the wall, fearful that their battle might cause it to fall. She hid herself on the other side in a corner of the spring away from the wall. She tried to enjoy herself, but the battle next to her was too loud and noisy, and some of strange and disturbing mood names. She was still far too embarrassed to relax in a public bath, even though she had the whole girl's side to herself. When she was finally starting to relax, and then she felt rather jealous of all the fun Lee and Guy were having on the other side. She didn't even know that she wasn't alone. A very old, short woman was only a few feet away from her with her head barely above the water. Kraken wave. Green cloud of protection. He, those two are as lively as ever," the old woman said. Hanabi jumped at the sudden voice. "I'm the caretaker of this hot spring. It's not often they bring a girl here anymore. Oh my dear, I think you've been in her too long. Just look at your eyes," she said. She stared at her for a moment. "I'm a my eyes are always like this," she said calmly. "Oh, that makes sense. Your eyes look just like Niji's. Is he your brother?" she asked. "No, he is my cousin," she told her in a reserved manner, not quite believing that she didn't already know about the Hyuga clan. "Oh, it will be nice to have a guest as well-mannered as Niji again. He never did get involved in the water battles. We almost never get any females to come because of those two," she said in a hoarse old voice. Hanabi looked at her for a moment before asking, "Why don't you just tell them to stop or kick them out?" "Well, I couldn't do that. Master Guy is the owner of the Green Rock Springs. A long time ago he took pity on me and my husband and brought us to this village. He bought this place for us and told us we would stay here and run it," the old woman stated. Hanabi asked curiously, "Why would he do that?" She moved a bit closer before saying, "Well, as kind-hearted as Master Guy is, he has never been good with the ladies. Our daughter Kimik was a wild and unruly girl. We had honestly had enough of her. We offered to marry her off to anyone that thought they could handle her. That is when Master Guy came to us," she said. "So you're his in-laws now, it makes sense," she said, nodding her head. "No, we aren't his in-laws. Guy offered to take her off our hands and we accepted. It all went bad when they met for the first time. She thought he was the ugliest man she had ever seen and refused to marry him. We told her she had no choice and that she would be leaving in the morning with him. She started a fire in our house and ran away. Master Guy helped us put out the fire, but our house was nearly burnt down to the ground. He apologized to us for his looks and for ever asking for our daughter hand in marriage. We were the ones that were sorry. He still didn't have anyone to be with. He took us back to this village and let us live here. He gave us jobs and pays us well. He is a very kind-hearted man," she said. "I never knew he was that sort of person," Hanabi said in mild shock. "Oh yes, he is real keeper if you're looking for a man," the old woman hinted. "Darn it, son. Cut it out. If you soak my futon again, I'll turn you over my knee and pop you a good one. You're never too old to get a spanking," the voice of an old cranky man yelled. "Sorry, Dad," Guy said meekly. "Sorry," Lee said quietly. Hanabi looked back over to the old woman with a very flat, disbelieving look. The old woman wore a very strained smile. Hanabi said in a very annoyed manner, "I'm not on the market. I've already got someone I like." The old woman rolled her eyes. "Let me guess, it's the great sage Naruto Uzumaki." She spoke in a sarcastic manner. "Yeah, how did you guess?" The old woman sighed. "He's already with the heiress of your clan named Hanabi. You don't stand a chance. You should give up on him and date my little guy. Think about it, you could have Konoha's noble green beast all to yourself," the old woman said suggestively. "Oh crap, Lee, we forgot to warn her about Mom. Hey Hanabi. If there's an old woman over there, don't believe a word she says," he yelled over the wall. The old woman got a stunned look on her face before she said, "You're Hanabi?" Hanabi looked very put out while glaring at the old woman. The old woman darted off in the blink of an eye, just like Guy-sensei, leaving a dust cloud behind her. She sighed and thought, "I can't believe the nerve of that old woman. She almost had me going about Guy-sensei being a kind-hearted man." Hanabi got out and put our robe in the changing room. She then realized she didn't have a change of clothes with her. She looked around the room and saw there were no other clothes for her to wear. A very obvious arm was stuck through the curtain-covering door that was waving a green jumpsuit at her. Her face faltered. You have got to be kidding me." "No way. I'd rather go naked. She yelled. I'm not sure that's going to work. The servants already took your clothes to be washed. They will not be done until in the morning. Besides, if you go around showing off all of your no places, Lee will likely beat you to death for doing something immoral. Guy said as he flapped the green jumpsuit a few times and waited a second. Then when Hayashi finds out, he'll get the Hokage to bring you back to life and he'll yell at you until your ears fall off. He said, waiting the jumpsuit again and waiting. Then NAR. She snatched the ugly green jumpsuit out of his hands in frustration. Guy looked over at Lee in the hall with his arm still behind the curtain. He pulled his hand out with a thumbs up and gave Lee a gleaming smile. Lee jumped up and down with his arms over his head while mutely yelling. Yeah. Hanabi was in a very foul mood as she put on the horrendous thing. She hated the look of it, but she had to admit it was very comfortable. It was easy to move in and soft to the touch. It felt as good as it looked bad. She checked herself in the mirror and blushed. I'm Guy-sensei, I think I need a bigger size, she said while looking at the outfit, revealing every facet and curve of her body in a very indecent way. Oh right, sorry, I think I gave you one of Lee's from when he was a boy. Here, try this one. He dropped another one through the curtain. This one was much thicker and a larger size that didn't look so alluring. She put it on and timidly came out of the bath. Lee said, Yay! Now you're one of us. Guy smiled and said, I take it you don't like the color, but it's made of the finest and most durable cloth money can buy. It's your reward for training with us. She was clearly embarrassed but managed to say, thank you. Okay, you too, we're going out to eat tonight, he said with a smile. Yay, curry of life, curry of life. Lee cheered. Hanabi dreaded going out in the green outfit and asked curiously and quietly to Guy, What's the curry of life? Guy whispered to her, Whatever you do, don't eat the curry of life, it's the curry of death to anyone, but Lee, even Naruto, couldn't stomach the stuff. Her eyes went wide in stunned silence. And that's okay, I'd rather stay here until my clothes are done being washed. You two have fun, she said nervously. Guy looked at her and said, I'm sorry, I'm afraid I can't let you stay. You have to have a Jonin rank or higher guard, Hanabi, and my father isn't even a ninja. My mother isn't either. She slumped her shoulders in dismay. You have to come with us or your father will get upset with me for leaving you unguarded, he said in that's final tone. Unluckily for her, the eatery was all the way across town and most of the town saw her wearing Guy's old uniform. Several even openly pointed and laughed at her. She trudged her way there feeling like the village's spectacle clown. Yay, we are here, Lee said as he raised a fist to the air. They were at a humble old wood building and had a sign that read, The Dragon's Fire Eatery. They walked inside and took a seat at the bar. Hi, Karasher, Lee said happily while waving at him. He replied, Coming right up. He turned around and went back to the kitchen. Hanabi was miserable and took a seat and let her head fall to the bar counter with a dull thud. The chef Karasher came back with a notepad to take their orders. What would the two of you like? He asked. I'll just have the beef plate with white rice, Guy said. Hanabi never moved her head from the bar and said, I'll have the curry of life. Guy got a wacky multi-posed shocked look and whispered loudly in her ear, I told you it's the curry of death to anyone, but Lee. She looked over at him and blinked blankly at him a few times and then turned back to the chef and said, Curry of life, please. Okay, 2 beef platters, 1 spicy, 1 normal coming up, he said with a quick rise and fall of his eyebrows and headed back to the kitchen. So just anyone can't get the curry of life, I see, she stated with her head on the bar. Guy gave her a dreading look and whispered loudly, No, of course not. You have to sign a waiver to even get the stuff that states if you die from IT isn't the restaurant's fault. Hanabi just shook head on the bar in misery. Naruto's worry for his students hadn't stopped in the least. He had sent a clone with Konohamaru and had been watching her all day. Naruto watched her come out of the hot spring wearing the same uniform as Guy and Lee. He watched her endure the horrible looks of the village as she went to eat with them, and he left when they finally went inside. Naruto whispered softly to himself in a defeated manner. So you have chosen a new sensei rather than return to me, I understand. They are far more suited to teach you than I am. Naruto sat quietly on the ledge of the Hokage's office watching a new dawn being born over the Hokage monument. The first rays of a new day touched the whiskers marks on his face as Tsunade came up the stairs in full ceremonial garb with her assistant in tow. Naruto, what are you doing here? The exam starts in 3 hours. Shouldn't you be getting ready? Tsunade said in a very tired tone. Naruto grabbed the ledge and flipped down in front of her. Long night of drinking, Tsunade? He asked knowingly. Humph. After all the time I spent putting together the Chunnin exams, I'm entitled to a few drinks. You didn't even come out to see everyone else arrive. She said, slight disappointed as she headed into her office as Naruto followed her. He took a seat in front of her desk. Sorry, I wasn't in a social mood yesterday. He replied quietly. You may be a sage, but this will be the hardest Chunnin exams there has ever been. You know that we haven't held it in over 3 years. There are many powerful Chunnin taking the exam. The water monk Takia is taking the exam this time. You know he stopped a volcano in the land of mountains with his water jutsu, right? Gaara's apprentice Matsuri is here as well. And don't forget your own apprentice. This isn't going to be easy, even for you. She told him sternly. Naruto gave her a weak smile. I think I failed before taking the field. My teammate for the exam still isn't ready to talk to me yet, and she has been training with another squad. I'm well aware of your situation, Naruto, but you should have at least shown yourself yesterday. There were many officials that wanted to meet with you. You have to remember you're a representative of this village more so than any Jonin because of what you have done. One of your old friends even came here to see you for the exams. She stated in a concerned voice. Naruto looked up at her. I'm sure I can meet up with them later then. Tsunade scowled at him. The Kazekage doesn't take time away from his village very often. Gaara? Gaara's here? Naruto asked in surprise. Tsunade stared him down. Yes, he wanted to meet with you and he figured he would be able to since yesterday was supposed to be a rest day for you. Naruto looked solemnly at the floor. There is no such thing as a rest day for me, not anymore. I was training all day and most of the night at the Hokage training ground. He said. Tsunade sighed and spoke in a much kinder voice. I know you were, but you can't train away your problem, Hanabi. You two are taking this exam together regardless of how scared of you she is. The both of you are expected to show up together. It's expected, it's well known even in other nations that you have been teaching the Hyuga heiress and that you two might be starting to be more than just student and teacher. Naruto gave her a sarcastic look. Oh joy. Now other 4 ninja nations are going to think I'm playboy as well. As if I don't have enough to worry about. He muttered while looking at the ceiling. Tsunade looked over at him and said. It's not too late to visit Gaara, you still have some time before the exams start. Maybe you should go see him. After all, he's the only one that might be able to give you advice on your problem. No matter how much I want to understand what it's like to be a Jinchuriki just to help you, I can't. Naruto gave her a slight smile. Thanks, I'll go visit Gaara and maybe have breakfast with him. He said with his mind far away. He is staying at safe house number 13 by the South River in town. Here, I'll write you a letter of audience to see him. Tsunade said while pulling out a sheet of paper to write something down. Naruto was already standing with one of his blue kunais in his hands with his eyes closed in concentration. Tsunade looked up from her writing and scowled at him. Naruto, don't. She managed to say before he vanished. ERGH. Damn him. For all his strength, I swear he's still as dumb as a box of rocks when it comes to politics. He can't just be so friendly with Gaara like that. He is the Kazekage after all. She said angrily. Kakashi closed his book while leaning against the far wall and sighed. When has Naruto ever treated Gaara as anything less than one of his most treasured friends? He said. Tsunade crossed her arms while her temper simmered. Still, how can he ever hope to be Hokage with such bad manners? I had hoped Hanabi could help him with that problem, but... She trailed off as her anger suddenly subsided. She sat there for a long moment looking at the floor before saying in a softer voice, I'm surprised he didn't come to you for advice. Kakashi nodded his head a few times. He did, he asked me yesterday morning. I really am starting to miss when he was younger and I could actually answer all his questions. Not that he had a lot of them with as headstrong as he was back then, beyond the one. How do I get stronger? He said. He pushed himself away from the wall and stared out at the monument of the fourth Hokage with a much more serious face. The older he gets, the more complicated his questions are. I've been thinking on it for almost a day and I'm still at a loss as to what advice to give him. He said and stood there for many long moments. Can you feel it, Tsunade? He asked, suddenly breaking the silence. What's that, Kakashi? She asked. The next generation, they are already starting to take over, soon they will not need us anymore. He said as he turned to look at her. Her eyes narrowed on him and she said, Are you implying I'm getting too old for this job? Kakashi smiled solemnly at her and drew a blue kunai from his holster and held it out in front of him. Tsunade looked down and stared at her desk for a long moment. She sighed deeply and reached into the top drawer of her desk and pulled out the kunai Naruto gave her. You see, whether we want it to happen or not, it is happening. I think it's time you submitted your list of successors. He said. She hung her head and then opened the bottom drawer of her desk and pulled out an old sheet of paper from the back of it. She inspected the faded paper for a long time. What makes you think I haven't? It's that same 3 names it's always been. My first choice died in the fight with the Akatsuki. My second is standing in this very room. And my third never got approval from the council and he is probably getting attacked by 20 sand ninjas for not following procedures. Tsunade stated sourly. Naruto reappeared in a small, dim room with 2 beds and a nightstand in between them. His yellow flash jutsu made no sound and yet he barely managed to avoid a kunai with a rope attached to it that streaked by his head. Wind spear jutsu! A strong female voice shouted as it passed over his shoulder and went through the outer wall of the room. A great sound of a gale blowing could be heard after it went through the wall. Dodge all you like. I will not let you lay a hand on Gaara. Snakevine Tangle Jutsu. The rope in the wall turned into a rapid-moving rope that threatened to ensnare Naruto. Naruto leaped to the ceiling to avoid it just before hearing. Sand Shield. The shield held the rope firm as grains of sand fell to the floor like snowflakes. Matsuri, that you have to know it's an enemy before attacking. Gaara said slowly, then coughed a few times before turning on the lamp near the bed. Gaara's was in a small bed sitting upright with his chest wrapped in bandages. Matsuri wasn't the shy, skinny girl she was the last time he saw her. She had blossomed into a beautiful young woman that carried herself with resolve. She had 2 whips in her hands with kunais attached to them that were laying limp on the floor. Couldn't you feel the great amount of chakra from this person? He asked. It could have been the Hokage trying to kill you for all I knew. She replied sharply. Gaara coughed several more times. Tsunade is overseeing my recovery. She isn't about to try to kill me. You're far too protective of me. I'm still more than a match for almost any foe even in my condition. He said in rasps. Naruto dropped down from the ceiling near Gaara. Gaara, what's wrong with you? He asked with his voice full of concern. Matsuri stared at Naruto for a long moment before realizing who he was, and she stepped outside the room just as thundering footsteps could be heard on the other side of the door. I've been infected with a flesh-eating mold. Some of it got through my sand armor and took root on my chest. None of our medics had seen it before and the best they could do was to put it into stasis. He said, trying to catch his breath. Gaara, are you in any danger? He asked worriedly. No, Tsunade has seen to that. She has removed the mold, but it's a wound that has to heal naturally. This is the main reason why I'm spending the entire Chunnin exams here. It is so she can oversee my recovery," he said. Naruto walked over and sat down on the other bed a few feet away from him and asked, "Do you suspect that you were poisoned by someone?" Gaara's breathing calmed and he said, "No, it's not likely. The mold naturally eats dead trees or bark. Its preferred food isn't human flesh. The ninjas that did the investigation on it found it was on one of the old books I was reading from our archives." Naruto looked at him in thought for a moment and asked, "How does that rule out foul play?" Gaara replied, "Because the book hadn't been read since the second Kazekage was alive." Naruto looked at him questioningly before asking, "How can you be so sure?" "Because it was sealed with a seal that only a Kazekage can open. I'm sure your village has seals equaling its kind. Forgive me, but I can't tell you much more than that. I do have to protect our archive secrets, I'm sure you understand," Gaara said knowingly. Naruto looked up at the ceiling. Of course he knew what Gaara meant. He was the keeper of the village's backup archive. "So you're really going to stay here for 3 months? Are you sure your village can do without you so long?" Naruto asked. Gaara gave him the slightest of smiles. "The exams will only last 2 to 3 weeks, Naruto. You're not supposed to know that, but it makes little difference. If you asked me, I'd tell you the setup for the whole exams in the interest of your opponents. I feel you shouldn't even be made to take this test with all you have done for the 5 nations." Naruto gave him a smile while nodding his head and said, "In many ways I agree with you, but if you make exceptions for one then you'll have to make exceptions for others. I don't want the order of our ninja system disrupted for me." There was a long silence before Gaara asked, "How is your training going?" Naruto let out a long sigh and fell back onto the small bed. "In the last 4 years I've effectively done over 4,200 years worth of training. Medical ninjutsu taught me the water element well enough to master it. I learned fire fairly quickly too because of Ruby being fire-based." "Earth," he said and sighed. "I still struggle with Earth. I'm not a master by any means, but I can use it well enough for my needs." Gaara nodded his head. "If it were any other time when I had a few days away from the village, I'd personally teach you the Earth element," he said kindly. Naruto looked at him honestly. "Yeah, I know, but I would never ask you to do that. I owe you enough for the anti-poison training your medics taught me." Gaara became quiet and asked, "And lightning? How is that coming along?" Naruto wore a solemn look and said, "Nothing. No matter how hard or long I train, the results are the same. My element leans the farthest away from lightning. I don't know how the Moon Sage did it even with his eyes. You never seem to change, Naruto. You're always training. So why have you come to me?" Gaara finally asked. Naruto looked over to him with a friendly smile. "You hungry? I thought we could get breakfast together seeing as I missed you yesterday. Matsuri, you can stop hiding at the door and come in." A loud thud was heard and the scrambling of someone getting back to their feet before the door opened a few moments later. The door creaked open slowly and Matsuri came in awkwardly. I was just guarding the door. I sent the other guards back to their post," she stammered. Naruto smiled at her nervousness and said, "So what does Gaara normal like to eat for breakfast?" She blinked a few times at his odd question and replied, "I normally feed him grilled cactus and dough weed. It's a pretty common morning meal in the desert." Naruto rubbed his chin in thought for a moment. "So you feed him breakfast?" Wait, she said with her arms shaking defensively out in front of her. That's not what I meant. I meant I bring him his breakfast," she stammered. Naruto chuckled at her. "It's not like that, Naruto. She is overprotective of me because of all the times I've saved her from harm. She feels the need to repay me for doing what a master should do," Gaara said in an emotionless tone. And does that include sleeping in the same room?" Naruto said suggestively. Gaara stood up and put on his formal Kazekage robe and hat and said, She helps me change my bandages and reminds me to take my medication, nothing more. Naruto chuckled. I was only messing with her. I don't think there is a place in the village to get that kind of breakfast though. We could always go to my favorite place to eat, he said with a big smile. Where is that? Gaara asked as he was adjusting his hat. Ichiraku Ramen, of course, he said as he walked out the door. Gaara followed him and said, I remember the medics said you talked about that place quite often when you came to get your anti-poison training. Yup. It's not open yet, but if we take our time getting there then we should make it just as he's opening up. Naruto, Gaara and Matsuri made it to Ichiraku's Ramen just before opening time. The small humble stand still had its shutters closed. The sounds of boiling water and chopping could be heard coming from the other side. The smells of chicken broth and pork hung thick in the air. Naruto took a seat on one of the 6 bar stools and Gaara sat next to him. Matsuri looked around and said, This isn't really what I was expecting. I thought your favorite place to eat would be a fancy restaurant, not a Togo bar. She took a seat next to Gaara. I've been coming here since I was little. This is the first place I come to after a long mission. It's one of the things I miss most when I'm away, he said with a longing smile. Matsuri asked him respectfully, So the food is really that good here? You better believe it, he said enthusiastically. Soon the sound of a lock clicked and the linked shutters clattered open. Tucci had his notepad in hand. So what will you? Whoa! He flinched and dropped his pen that bounced a few times on the bar. Gaara gave the ramen master an odd look and asked in an emotionless tone, Does my appearance not frighten you? Tucci had his hand on his chest trying to calm his racing heart. Yes, I mean no. Sorry, I just wasn't ready for it, he said, collecting his composure. He gave Gaara a respectful bow and said, I'm sorry for my reaction. I hope you haven't taken any offense. Gaara paused for a moment and said, No offense was taken. Well, what will you have today? He asked with a smile and his pen over his notepad. Naruto enthusiastically spoke up. I'll have 4 bowls of pork cutlet with extra eggs. Matsuri gave Naruto a curious look and asked, Is this food salty? Naruto's eyes narrowed at her. Of course. It is ramen after all. Tucci put his head in his hands and said, Naruto. Most Saiyan ninjas don't like salty foods, even I know that. Naruto gave him a strange look and asked, Why not? What's wrong with salty foods? Naruto, water is scarce in our village. We don't eat salt because it dehydrates the body. We are all taught not to waste water at a very young age. Even the wealthiest of our village doesn't eat salt very often, Gaara stated. Naruto got a foreboding look and said, No wonder I thought all the food there was so bland. Don't worry, I'll take it easy on the salt. You two aren't the first Saiyan ninjas I've served, he reassured them. Gaara took a moment to look over the menu and said, I'll have the vegetable bowl please. Matsuri said respectfully, I'll have the same please. How are things in your village these days? Naruto asked. Gaara looked over at him and spoke calmly. Every day brings new challenges and new problems. Overall it's been peaceful these last 3 years, so I have no complaints. Our ninjas taking the exam are well trained. I'm hopeful to get at least 6 Chunnins this year. 6? Wow, that's a lot for 1 year, he replied in mild surprise. Gaara watched Tucci cutting up noodles and said, Not really. We have 34 squads taking the exams this time. Naruto's eyes went wide and he said, Wow! My first time through we only had about 50 squads total. No wonder Tsunade said it was going to be tough this year. I believe all the nations are having 34 teams participate this year. All the nations are overdue for promotions. Our village had an exam just to qualify before we got here, Matsuri said. Speaking of which, where are your teammates? Naruto asked Matsuri curiously. I don't have any. I'm the only student Gaara ever accepted. I'm taking the exam alone. I haven't gotten my hopes up to become a Chunnin my first try, but I will do my best. She said respectfully. I thought you had to have 3 members. Naruto said in thought. Gaara looked at him solemnly. As much as I wish I was gifted with your great ability to forgive anyone for anything, I do not possess it to the degree that you do. I would lay down my life for any of my people, but I just can't bring myself to train those that treated me so poorly. Or to train their children. Not yet. I do have another I am training. He's a small boy and he has no idea it's me helping him with his taijutsu. He too was being mistreated because he was small. I come to him masked and cloaked to oversee his training at night. I hope he will be ready for the exams in another year. Then Matsuri will have a teammate. I don't have enough time to take on students as it is. This is the best I can do for now, he stated. Matsuri gave Gaara a sour look of disappointment. And he will not even give me a hint as to who it is. Naruto laughed at her. Of course not. He doesn't want you trying to steal his student. Matsuri chuckled loudly. Naruto finished his 3rd bowl of ramen in an inhaling manner and set the bowl down. Whoa! That was good. I hope the first task is a mission quest. Maybe escort a merchant or maybe like the scroll test the last time I took it. Naruto said hopefully. Gaara said, It's a WR. A voice from down the street cut him off saying the same thing over and over while getting closer and high speed. Ramen, 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 ramen. Konohamaru sprinted at full speed and skidded to a halt right in front of Ichiraku Ramen with his dust trail overshooting him. Hey! You're supposed to treat your students on an important day like this, he said with a quivering finger of accusation pointed at Naruto. He said as he was slurping the noodles of his 4th bowl of ramen into his mouth. Don't tempt me. Where's my bowl? He yelled at him in anger. Naruto rolled his eyes. Okay, it's my treat. Order what you want. Yay! 3 bowls of pork cutlet ramen please, he said as he happily sat down. Matsuri eyed Konohamaru for a moment before asking. Who is that guy? That is Naruto's student and the 3rd Hokage's grandson Konohamaru. Gaara said quietly. Actually, I made him my apprentice of sorts. Naruto said casually between slurps. This is the god of ninjutsu's grandson? She asked skeptical manner. Konohamaru looked over at her and casually said. Hey, how's it going? Naruto said. Matsuri. Matsuri, wait, this is Gaara's only student? Do you think she can summon a sand tsunami like Gaara? He asked Naruto intently. Naruto reached over and held his hand over Konohamaru's head for a moment without looking at him and smacked him on his head. Oh! What was that for? He asked in protest while rubbing his head. For asking about a competitor's jutsu before the test, he said through his food in an annoyed voice while eating. But you said he can summon a huge wave of sand and I never got to see it. He complained while still trying to numb his throbbing head with his hand. Would you really want him to show you it when we are in the middle of the village? He'd bury most of this area. He replied. Well, no, not here, but I'd still like to see it. Konohamaru said hopefully. The only way you're likely to see that jutsu is if you attack him and survive long enough that he doesn't have any other choice but to use it. I don't recommend it, Naruto stated. Konohamaru's eyes went wide. There's no way I'm attacking one of the 5 Kages just to see a jutsu, he stated ominously. Naruto nodded his head a few times and said, Then don't ask about it. Your student is a lot like you when you were younger, Naruto. Gaara said. I know, he said in a knowing manner that was both proud and sarcastic. They finished their breakfast at a leisurely pace and Konohamaru got up and said, What do you think the first part of the test will be? I have no idea, Naruto said. It's a written test, Gaara said without any emotion. They both hung their heads and said, "Crap! I hate tests like that. I'll see you later, Naruto. And don't think I'll be holding back when we get matched up in the third round," Konohamaru said with a wave as he darted off. "He's certainly lively," Matsuri said. "I need to get going as well. You two take care," Naruto said and got up to leave. "Naruto, I have a favor to ask of you," Gaara said suddenly. Naruto turned back and looked at him curiously. "If you get pitted against Matsuri in the test, don't hold back," he stated. All the color drained from Matsuri's face and she stood there blankly. Naruto gave him an honest smile, said, "Sure thing, Gaara." He leaped away through the crowds of ninja that were heading to take the test as well. "Mr. WWHY, did you do that? Have I displeased you so much that you wanted to kill me? You said it yourself that it was unlikely that even you could beat him," she stammered. Gaara turned to her with his emotionless eyes. "That is true. If you ever want to find out why, you'll have to fight him yourself." Matsuri was clearly on edge as Gaara led her to the academy where she would be taking her test. Hanabi was at the dining room table with her father, sister, and cousin. "Are you nervous?" Niji asked her. She threw him a sideways glance and said, "A little." She went back to staring at her food. "I'd say that it's more than a little. You haven't even touched your food," Hinata said knowingly. Her father spoke in a commanding voice. "You have to put your feelings for the sage aside and take the test with him. Just concentrate on the task in hand, nothing more. Remember, you are our clan's representative for this exam. I expect you to behave properly." "Yes, father," she said meekly. The sounds of chopsticks on plates boomed loudly in the silent room as they ate. "Will Naruto be taking me to the exams?" she asked nervously. "No, he's meeting with the Kazekage this morning. I'll be escorting you to the test," Niji stated. "You two best hurry. The streets are crowded with other ninja this morning," Hayashi said. The streets were indeed crowded, more so than Hanabi had ever seen them. Every eve and hotel on the way to the academy had ninjas on them getting ready. "I've never seen the village so packed," she said loudly over the noise of so many others talking. "I had no idea it was going to be this bad, or I would have left earlier," he yelled back through the loud noise of everyone talking. The rooftops had Umbu on them watching over the crowd and breaking up fights that broke out. Niji kept anyone from getting too close to Hanabi. Some places were so bad that the ninjas were smashed right up against each other. It took them 3 times longer than normal to get to the academy building they were assigned to. The crowds were much thinner once they were off the main roads. The 5-story building had a short line of Chunnin and a Jonin instructor with a clipboard and a paper at the door. They waited in line quietly until they made it to the instructor. Once they reached him, he asked, "Name, squad, affiliation, and Jonin instructor's name?" The ninja asked them. Hanabi straightened herself up tall and said, "Hanabi Hyuga, Squad 7, Land of Fire and..." She paused for a second to think before speaking again. "My instructor is a genin named Naruto Uzumaki." The instructor peered over his clipboard at her as Niji put his head in his hands. Niji mumbled loudly. It figures Naruto wouldn't even teach her the basics. He took his head out of his hands and said, "Her Jonin instructor is Kakashi-sensei." "Kakashi? He's retired. I thought Naruto was the leader of Squad 7. She said in near offense. No, even if Kakashi was taken out of Squad 7, the leader would be Sakura until the Hokage assigned a new one, as she's the highest rank in the group," he stated. She blushed slightly from embarrassment. She then crossed her arm while giving him a stubborn look and said, "Kakashi isn't the one teaching me though. He's still the instructor of the group. Naruto is your master of sorts, but technically he isn't allowed to take on students until he becomes a Jonin. He is taking on students only because there isn't a law against it, because they never had a genin capable of handling it until now." Nor have there been students that wanted to be trained by a Chunnin. He is training you in Kakashi's place," he stated in exasperation. The instructor chuckled softly and said, Well, you're one of the sage's students. It will be interesting to see how far you make it. Your test room is 7C. If your team members aren't there by 10 o'clock you all fail." He motioned her inside. Hanabi bowed slightly and went inside the door. Niji tried to follow, but the instructor held out his arm to stop him. "I'm sorry, test takers are the only ones allowed to enter," he stated firmly. "I'm assigned to protect her by the head of the Hyuga clan. She is our heiress," he stated firmly. "Sorry, rules are rules. I can't let anyone else in. There are a lot of nobles taking the test, I can't make exceptions." Hanabi traversed the hall where several three-man squads were loitering and talking about the test. Some seemed nervous. Others were overconfident to the point of being arrogant. Hanabi kept quiet while moving through the crowded hall. "Hey there, honey. I think you're in the wrong place," a giant, fat earth ninja with no hair said as he stepped into her path. "What a beautiful little girl, and she's all alone. Just the way I like them." A tall skinny man with short red hair with an evil glare. "Pretty girls, I hate pretty girls," the purple-haired woman with green eyes said while scowling at Hanabi. Hanabi ignored them and kept moving forward. The fat ninja stepped in front of her, barring her way. "Hey, now I'm talking to you, missy. That was very rude, now you better apologize." "As if I would apologize to you, you fat slob," she snapped at him. "What did you just say?" he retorted angrily. "Yeah, the little twit doesn't even know who she's messing with." "I already hate this girl," the angry woman said. "There is an empty room down the hall that would be perfect for teaching her a lesson in manners, Senkai," the red-haired man said. "That a great idea, Lenza. If we hurry we can even make it back for the exams on time," he said with a smile. "She will not be so pretty when I'm done with her," the woman said with a sadistic grin as she drew a kunai. Hanabi wore an expression of annoyance and gritted her teeth before whispering, "Byakugan." The veins in her temples bulged. Whispers from a group of leaf ninjas could be heard saying, "Look, someone's picking a fight with Hanabi." "Really? Are they stupid or something?" another said. "I've got to see this," another said as all three of them watched the battle about to unfold. "I think she's scared now. Look at her face," Lenza said in a teasing manner. "Nasty. Look at those veins," the woman said. "Still, you're coming with us," Senkai said and tried to grab Hanabi's forearm. Hanabi moved around his clumsy grab and hit him right on the forehead with an open palm. She quickly turned in fully taijutsu form to the other two and the big man hit the floor out cold. "What the heck did she just do? She barely touched him and ends up on the floor," Lenza said in surprise. The other squad of Leaf Ninja were already trying to suppress their giggles. "Akima, I think we might want to get out of here," he said, looking around at everyone staring at them uncomfortably. "Ha ha ha. Now he figures it out. What morons! Who in the right minds picks a fight with a Hyuga?" the Middle Leaf Ninja said. "Yeah, I know," another agreed. Lenza reached down and helped drag the fat man to his feet. Akima sneered at Hanabi for a long moment before saying, "This isn't over, Wallflower. I'll find a way to get you. Hey, give me a hand. Senkai's freaking heavy," he said as he strained under the big man's weight. She went over and helped haul the fat man away. "You get those types of guys every exam. They try to bully others to make others think they're strong," the shortest in the Leaf Ninja squad said. "And then they turn out to be weaklings," another said. "Maybe it wasn't so smart to come inside without Naruto. I'm making myself a target for other groups," she thought as she headed off to the stairs. She made it near the stairs where there was a crowd of 20 or so ninja all talking loudly. Can't anything be simple? Even making it to the room is proving to be a chore, she thought in exasperation. What's the hold up? She asked another leaf ninja. They say Naruto is blocking the stairs, telling everyone to go home, that they aren't worthy of taking the test, he said. She blinked a few, trying to process this information. He what? She said in disbelief and shock. She slowly worked her way through the crowd while hearing his voice. None of you guys are worthy, so pack up and get out of here, Naruto said loudly. I didn't come all the way here just to get turned away, one ninja said. Me either, another said. Let's just force him out of the way, someone suggested. I'm not touching him. He's already dropped 2 others without breaking a sweat. You can go for it if you want, another replied. Many of the other ninja were protesting and getting mad when Hanabi finally made it to the front of the crowd. Her expression went from disbelief to rage. Even the loud room started to quiet down as she stared daggers at him. Whoa! Who's that short girl that looks like she's about to attack him? Someone whispered. I don't know, he whispered back. You're, she said through gritted teeth. You're not Naruto, you imposter. Ha, come prove it then, he replied and taunted her. How dare he muddy Naruto's name like this? Naruto can do that just fine on his own. Kunai launch at his left side and side spin and land a strike at each of his lungs. That should shut this imposter up, especially when he can't breathe, she thought angrily. She grabbed a kunai out of her holster and charged her hands for the attack. She suddenly felt a huge mass of chakra behind her and a hand on her shoulder. Naruto's eye pupils were flattened out and he was radiating chakra out in all directions from behind her. Several ninja backed away from the sudden overwhelming killing intent coming out of the Naruto behind Hanabi. Wow, now there are 2 of them, one guy said fearfully. Maybe he is the real sage. I didn't even see him move and he did the shadow clone jutsu. He is fast, another said in disbelief. A smaller girl ninja from the Land of Wind was visibly trembling. That's not a shadow clone behind her. That's the really one. I'd never felt this much chakra before, the air that's humming with chakra, she said while backing away in terror. That guy is total different than their other one. The tension in the air was stifling. As the 2 Narutos stared at each other, the Naruto behind Hanabi slowly let go of his killing intent until the tension broke. The other Naruto's hinge broke into a puff of smoke. A Chunnin instructor hit the floor panting from the stress. Naruto turned around while his eyes went back to normal. Hanabi, I asked you to never use that unless you were in dire need, he said in a stern manner. Hanabi blinked a few times and gave him a blank stare for a long moment. She slowly looked at the kunai in her hand, on a cobalt blue kunai, and it hit her. Oh Kami, I loaded my kunais in the wrong order, she thought in dismay. Naruto sighed as his eyes went back to their normal blue. I just wasted a lot of chakra. Come on, let's get to the testing room, he said as he walked up the stairs. Sorry Naruto. I didn't mean to call you like that, she said apologetically. Naruto stopped suddenly. By the way, which room is our testing room? He asked with a boyish grin while scratching the back of his head. She gave him an odd look and said, 7C. That's on the 3rd floor then, he said. It's right over there Naruto, she replied while pointing at a room in front of them. Naruto leaned down and whispered to her. This is the 2nd floor. Just making it to the classroom is part of the test. Be mindful. In a mission, little things like that can cost someone their life. Yes, sensei, she said with wide eyes. They entered the classroom that could hold over 100 people. They took their assigned seats at different ends of the classroom and waited for the bell to ring. Wow, this takes me back to my days in the academy, Naruto thought nostalgically. The classroom slowly filled up and the bell rang. Everyone took their seat at a desk. A thick paper booklet was on each desk. This looks like a ton of questions. Erg, I hate these kinds of tests, he thought as he rolled his eyes. There was a short puff of smoke from behind the desk and the instructor appeared and said, "I am Shibi Aburam, the instructor for the first test. Just by making it here you have passed the first part of the test, but now the really test begins. The rules of the test are as follows. You are allowed to use any jutsu you wish to help you absorb information from your test booklet and only the test booklet as long as it's not disruptive. You are also allowed to use any jutsu to increase your speed of writing down answers if you possess any. The use of any other form of jutsu is forbidden, and since I know we have at least one elemental master in the room, I'll also add this includes jutsu that can be done with thought alone. The use of any drugs to enhance your intelligence is forbidden as they are almost certainly fake and are likely poison that you bought from a con artist. You will have to pass this test on your own. If anyone is caught cheating you will instantly fail. The failure of one person in a squad means the whole squad fails. You are to answer as many of the questions as you can in the 1 hour time limit. As we haven't had the exams in a long time, the point system has been changed to weed out those that have a weak mind. For every correct answer you get you will get 1 point, for every one you answer incorrectly you will get deducted 5 points. Anyone with a negative number at the end will automatically fail. Your squad's score will be added together at the end of the test. Only the top 7 squad scores will advance to the next task. If you finish please sit quietly until the test is over. Oh, one last thing, he said with a deadly calm. The Hokage has required that I tell you all that there is a very real possibility that many of you will die while taking this test, he said ominously. A stunned silence filled the room before someone said, "Ha died from a written test." The ninja was clearly trying to hide his nervousness. Yes. Unfortunately, I'm required to give everyone the chance to leave the class and try again next year if you don't feel you're up to the task this year, he stated with an open hand pointing at the door at the back of the room. You have 5 minutes to speak to your squad and make your decision. The room was suddenly a whirl of movement as squads got together and spoke. You don't really think we can die from this written test, do you? One person asked. Not a chance. They aren't allowed to kill us just to test us, another said. You fools, there were a few ninjas that died during the second test last time they held it. We aren't allowed to kill our opponents during the third test. They are encouraged to make sure there is a chance of death during these tests. The ninja hissed loudly. Naruto never moved from his seat and waited calmly for the 5 minutes to expire. Hanabi quietly made her way over to Naruto, and when she was within 5 feet of him he suddenly said, "Remember my lessons, Hanabi." Hanabi stopped in her track. I hate that he knows where I am without looking at me, she thought as she closed the gap between them. She kneeled down next to his desk. Do you? Yes. He answered her question before she spoke it. His eyes were locked on the chalkboard at the front of the class. Really? She said worriedly. He leaned over and whispered to her. The clock for the test has already started. It's on his desk. You're already failing to grasp the first part of the test. Be aware of your surroundings. He's already shown just how deadly this test is going to be as well, he stated without emotion. Hanabi suddenly looked at the chalkboard. On it were hand-drawn pictures of beetles and insects and a short description of each of them. Most were highly poisonous. Hanabi's face suddenly wore a look of dread, though she did well to hide it. Oh, Kami! They are going to release all those bugs while we are taking the test. That's what he meant when he said this was going to be a deadly test, she thought ominously. Back to your seat, Hanabi, he said as he pulled out a kunai and picked up his test booklet. He cut the paper, sealed it, and opened it up. Several other Chunin's face lit up when Naruto did this and started their own test. What are you doing, Naruto? She whispered loudly. Naruto was already on the second question. I told you the test has already started, he stated loudly. No, it hasn't. He hasn't said start yet. He gave us 5 minutes to. The Wind Ninja said as he looked around room to see several others had started their test and several more squads heading for the door to retire from the test. But, you said we had 5 minutes to. The ninja said to Shibi. Oh dear me, I forgot to tell you. The test started when the bell rang. The 5 minutes is the time in which you can choose to leave before the test gets deadly, he said in an eerily calm manner. The Wind Ninja wore a frozen stare. Only 56 minutes left to answer as many questions as you can, he said with a slight laugh. Hanabi raced back to her seat and opened her booklet. Hanabi quickly picked up on the pattern of the test. One insanely hard question, then 5 easy ones over and over. If I miss even one of the easy ones, I'll have a negative score and fail right off the bat. Cammy, the highest score I can hope for is a 0. She thought in dismay. The 5 minutes is up, Shibi stated. Please seal the doors. Tuumbu closed the doors and a heavy bolt could be heard sliding into place with a loud boom in the quiet room. Now is when you will put your life on the line, he said ominously as thousands of bugs emerged from his body and filled the room in a deadly swarm. You are no longer allowed to move your feet during this test, let me explain why, he said as he pulled out a long stick and slapped it loudly on the chalkboard, which caused most of the Chunnins to jump with a start. This is the Tusker cloud beetle. Its shell is a bright green color because it is a grass insect. This helps to camouflage it from its enemies. This breed also has one other thing that makes it unique. If it is stepped on, its poison gland of quickly evaporating poison is released into the air. It's a poison that. A crunch echoed through the room from under the desk of one of the test takers that was nervously taping his heel while trying to block out Shibi's grotesque lesson on bugs. Oh! It seems Mr. Hakai of the Land of Lightning has offered his services on what happens when you step on a Tusker cloud beetle, he said. The unknowing ninja looked up just after his name was called as a green puff of poison wafted up from under his desk. At first nothing happened, but soon all the bright green beetles in the room started flying around erratically. Some were even knocking other bugs out of the air to get to Hakai. Within a second they swarmed him. He tried to scream, but all that came out was a water gurgle as they entered his mouth and devoured his body. In the span 6 heartbeats his body was reduced to a pile of bones that littered the chair and floor around his desk. They are also known as the cannibal frenzy beetle. Fascinating, aren't they? He said in an emotionless tone. One ninja panicked and ran to the door screaming. Bugs scurried out of his way as he ran to the door. Let me out! I quit! He yelled in terror as he banged on the door. Oh, you don't understand, Mr. Zahii of the Land of Lightning, you can't escape this room until the test is over. You already had your chance to leave, Shibi said without emotion. He continued to bang on the door and scream for help. It's not a good idea to make noise like that. You'll attract the dust red beetle, he stated. Red beetles swarmed him. Each time they bit him he flinched or jerked wildly, but he kept banging on the door while screaming. His movements became more and more sluggish until he fell down. Here I'd hoped to save the dust red beetle for last. Pay attention everyone. This beetle paralyzes its victims. Once it has you sedated, it eats you while you're still alive and conscious. Mr. Zahii will watch the beetles devour him slows while being fully aware of what's happening to him, he said coldly. This is insane. No one could pass this test under these conditions. What are they thinking? What are they really testing us on? Hanabi thought while trembling in her desk as bugs crawled and flew all around her. Oh, silly me. I forgot to tell you all one of the rules. Each skipped question is minus 10 points, Shibi stated. The few people that were doing the test quickly started flipping back in their booklets. Think Hanabi, what is Naruto doing? Maybe that will give me a clue, she thought as she looked up the aisle. He's just sitting there doing his test like nothing's wrong. The test, she thought. Naruto told me to be aware of my surroundings. I'm surrounded by freaking man-eating bugs. How does that help? She looked around the room and noticed something written on the chalkboard. The 7 teams with the highest test scores will advance. I see. The bugs are there to distract us from the test. The bugs, there is far too many of them. There is no way he could house all of them in his body, and the Aburame clan only house one type of bug per member. She thought. Ha, finally someone decided to cheat. I was hoping for that. Ms. Secra of the Sand Village. Thank you for volunteering to show what happens when you upset a nest of desert scarabs, he stated. The young ninja wore a look of utter terror as large beetles with giant pincers enveloped her. Her horrid screams caused almost everyone in the room to flinch as she fell out of her desk while watching the beetles bore under her skin and devour her innards. These beetles are fond of the heart muscle. After they eat the heart, she will still feel the pain of the beetles for 6 minutes afterwards before she dies from lack of blood flow, he stated. The ninja next to the girl being eaten by the scarabs threw up on the floor from the grotesque sight. Hanabi's breathing was heavy and she was starting to panic. She couldn't hold her pencil still from all her trembling. I have to remain calm, she told herself. She kept reading the rules that were on the board. You may only use jutsu on your test booklet or answer sheet. How is that going to help? There are deadly bugs all over my test booklet. Wait. There are too many bugs. There are too many kinds of bugs. We can use jutsu on our test booklet, she thought. She whispered softly. Byakugan. The bugs on her test book disappeared. That it. It's Jinjutsu, she thought as she released her jutsu and looked around the room. There were no dead bodies or bones on the floor. The students that had been eaten by bugs were just passed out on the floor. None of the bugs he was talking about were in the room. The only kind of bugs that was in the room was the chakra-eating type. Most of them were just watching the test takers. Several of the ninjas had fainted from stress and lay slumped in their desk. The ones that haven't given up were feverishly working on their test. Only 38 minutes left of the test, Shibi said in a warning manner. I see the only rules that matter are the one that pertain to the points on the written test. Only the top 7 go on. I'm such a fool. Why did it take me so long to figure it out? We are already at a disadvantage because we only have 2 in our group and I've wasted almost half the test time, she lamented as she began working on her test with renewed vigor. Shibi continued his lesson on bugs while they worked away on the test. I've got to get one of the hard questions right to score some points. Question 37. What is the Lumrka formula and how is it applied in combat? I don't know this one either. Cammy, this test is hard, she thought. She worked through the next set of easy questions until she got to the next hard one. Question 42. What are the effects of the Doran red spotted mushroom and how can it be used to aid a ninja? Great, I don't know that one either, she thought in dismay. Only 4 minutes left. I've got to get the next hard question. I'm pretty sure I missed one of the easy questions in this block. Question 48. Pokai Manual of Political Maneuvers states that you should always bring what to a political debate? I've read that book. Father made me read it a long time ago. Oh, think. What's the answer? I've only got a few minutes left, she thought back. The book was green and it had a picture on the front of it. A picture of a man sitting at a round table with others in a debate room. That picture, the man in the center was the only one with an assistant. Because 2 heads are always better than 1. That's the answer, she thought as she wrote it down and had just enough time to get one more of the easy question. The bell rang, cutting of Shibi lesson on the bark beetle known to carry diseases. Pencils down, everyone. The test is over, he said, and several of the students poofed into smoke as well as several things in the room. 12 instructors that were hidden during the test emerged after the smoke cleared. The sound of metal on metal came from the back of the room as 2 Umbu unbarred the door and opened it. All those that have a bug sitting on their desk, please stay in the room. If you do not have a bug on your desk, then either you or one of your teammates has been disqualified regardless of your score on the test. Please gather your teammates and leave the room, Shibi said while pointing at the door. Hanabi was reluctant to look down at first, but she looked only to find one of Shibi's beetles on her desk. She breathed a sigh of relief. Squads of ninjas left the room. Some were carrying their passed-out teammates. Some of them were mad at their teammates, but most were relieved it was finally over and they could leave. All of the bugs returned to Shibi's body in a buzzing whirl. "Now I will tell you the squads that scored the highest," he said. "But wait, you haven't even graded our papers." A leaf ninja said. "Actually, I've already graded all your papers. You all had thousands of eyes on you during the whole test. I can see whatever my bugs see. I was grading your paper while you wrote down the answers," he stated. Someone whispered. "Wow, he was giving that lesson on bugs and grading all our papers at the same time. That's unreal." The squads passed are Squads 3 and 6 of the Land of Earth, Squad 14 of the Land of Lightning, Squad 9 of the Land of Water, Squad Disciple of the Land of Wind, and Squad 18 of the Land of Fire. He stated. "Wait a minute, that's only 6 squads. Who's the last squad that passed?" Someone protested. "The last squad has yet to be determined because of an answer someone gave to one of the questions. The answer given by that person is not yet known to be correct or not," he stated. "An answer to one of the questions? Whose answer was it?" he said. "That would be Naruto Uzumaki's answer on question 7. He replied. "That's special treatment. What a load of crap. I don't care if he is some sort of hero." Someone replied. "If anyone else feels this way, you're welcome to follow us to the roof and try to perform his answer to question 7 yourself. If you can, I'll pass you," he stated. Most of the ninja flipped back in their test booklets to see what question 7 was. "What's the farthest you can throw a kunai based on Kimrai law? Please explain how you came up with that answer." Someone said. "How can you not know if his answer was right or not?" Another said. "I will give his answer when we are on the roof," Shibi replied. Murmurs filled the classroom as Naruto and Shibi went out the window and up to the roof. Almost everyone in the class followed. Naruto positioned himself at the edge of the roof on the top floor. So what was his answer to the question? Some asked with their arms crossed. Quote, "I'm not bound by Kimrai's law or his formulas of air currents. The distance I can throw a kunai is dependent on my elemental control of the wind. As a kunai gets farther away from me, it becomes harder and harder to control it or aid it with wind. By charging the blade with my wind element, the kunai will create its own wind that will negate the effect of almost any air current. With my current chakra levels, I could land a kunai on top of the Hokage monument within 3 meters of where I aim it from this building," he said. "You gotta be kidding me. That's like 2 kilometers away. No one could do that." One of the ninjas said his disbelief. Many others murmured agreement. "Well, Naruto, let's see it," he said as he handed him a marker tag. Naruto drew one of his kunai and tied the marker tag to it. Everyone became silent as he eyed the monument. The breeze blew lightly as Naruto drew back his arm and charged the blade with his wind element. Thousands of tiny wind blades appeared on it as it started to hum louder and louder. After several tense moments, he threw the kunai and gale force wind was released that knocked down almost everyone behind him. Naruto stood silently watching it rocket through the air. A ninja that was struggling against the wind to get back to his feet said, "Kami, I think he could hit the moon with that much chakra. Man, that was unreal." Another said as the backlash of wind nearly knocked him over again. "Did he land it on top of the monument?" A red-haired ninja asked. "Where were you aiming, Naruto?" Shibi asked him slowly from beside him. Naruto drew another kunai and wrapped his arm around Shibi's neck and they disappeared. "What the heck? Where did they go?" a ninja asked. "Time-space jutsu, he really is one of the great sages," the red-haired ninja said in amazement. "You're kidding me. He just used time-space jutsu? Only a few ninja in history could use that. It is said to be the hardest of all jutsu to learn." Someone replied in shocked awe. "I was aiming here, Shibi," Naruto said from just behind the 4th Hokage's head on the Hokage monument. Shibi reached down at his feet and picked up a cobalt blue kunai and marveled at the marker tag on it. "Impressive, Naruto," Shibi said. Naruto didn't seem the least bit interested in his feet. His thoughts were far away while looking out over the village. "Something on your mind?" he asked. Naruto shook away his thoughts and gave him a weak smile. "Sorry, it's a habit. I have to think while I'm here. Let's get back." Naruto and Chibi leaped from roof to roof before finally getting back to the academy roof. "Well, did he hit his mark?" they asked. Chibi spoke loudly. "The 7th squad to pass is Squad 7 of the Land of Fire. All of you that passed returned to the classroom." Once everyone was seated again, he spoke. "Congratulations on passing the first test, everyone. Are there any questions?" someone asked. "What were you really testing us on?" "That is simple. You were given the opportunity at the start of the test to leave, but in any mission there is danger. You will be expected to put your life on the line. The door was sealed to teach you that once you take on a mission you can't just run away because you might die. You all were being tested on your perception skill as well." The bulk of the Chunnin didn't notice the timer on the desk that was already ticking away. The mentally sharp ones picked up on this and started their test right away. The others were 5 minutes behind. That few minutes gave them an advantage over their competitors. In a mission, 5 minutes can mean failure or success. But there were also things to use your perception against you. Like the descriptions on the board. At first it just seemed like trivial knowledge that many overlooked. It was quite another matter later in the test. In missions you will have to gather and sift through a lot of information. Some of it will help you and others will lead you astray. The next part of the test was to see if you could break the Jinjutsu that was in the room. The jutsu was designed to see how you would handle stress. Many of you figured out that the things happening in the room were too horrific to be possible or real. Those that broke the jutsu had a much easier time than those that didn't even know it was there. As you may have figured out, the highest score any of you were likely to achieve was a 0. This further added to the stress. Many cracked under that stress. How you handle stress will mean life or death in many of your missions. Remember, your squad is only as strong as its weakest link. If one of you cracks in a mission, they put everyone else in your squad in danger. "Are there any other questions?" he said. "Why could only 7 squads pass the test?" a black-haired ninja asked. "With 34 squads from each nation taking the test, we have to cut the numbers of ninja we send to the next task. The first task is designed to cut the field down to 35 squads. He stated. "I have a question. Why is the Great Toad Sage here? I mean, come on. You can't honestly expect us to believe he's taking the Chunnin exams with us," a large earth ninja said. Chibi raised one of his eyebrows at him. "I regret to inform you that his official rank is Chunnin. Even a sage or hero is bound by the laws of the 5 nations, Mr. Mikio. There are no exceptions. On the bright side, there are several books written about him. I suggest you pick one of them up because you will be competing against him in the next part of the exams," he said flatly. "What? No way. He's a Chunnin?" another ninja said. "I thought he was just part of the first test. Who knew we'd have to compete against a guy like him?" a short ninja said in an ominous tone. Naruto just shook his head. "Are there any other questions?" Chibi asked. The room grew eerily quiet. "The second task will be held at Training Ground 42 at 10 a.m. sharp tomorrow. You're all dismissed," he said. Naruto walked over to Hanabi. "Come on, Hanabi, I'll take you home," he said in a distant voice as he led her out of the room. They arrived at the Hyuga compound gates after getting through the crowded village's main streets. "I'll see you tomorrow at the second task," he said, never looking at her, and walked away. Why is he so distant? She thought, and instantly her mind brought back the image of Naruto fighting terrifying nine-tailed fox. She trembled for a moment before mastering herself once more. "I'd forgotten about it. I was too focused on the test to remember. Just remembering makes me uneasy. Like I don't know whether to run away or run into his arms," she thought. Are you catching a chill, Lady Hanabi? The gate guard asked. Hanabi shook her head and looked at him. No, I'm fine, she replied shakily. Did your test go well? He asked. Yes, we passed. It was much more challenging than I thought it would be, she told him. I'm sure your father will be pleased, he replied with a smile. When Lord Hyuga heard the news, he took Hanabi and Hinata out to the finest restaurant in the village. Hanabi was unusually quiet the whole time, even though Hinata was trying to cheer her up. He father warned her about the possible trials she would face in the second task. When they finally got home, she went straight to her room to finally be with her thoughts. She laid on her bed looking up at the ceiling for many hours, trying to find the solution to her problems. Throughout the entire day, he never once looked me in the eyes. It was hard for me to look him in the eyes as well. He seemed so distant and sad. She thought carefully. Flashback. Whether I like you or not has nothing to do with it. You're a heiress, Hanabi. You can't end up with someone that can't give you heirs. I'm just telling you that this is not likely to change. If you still want to be my pretend girlfriend, that's fine, even though it does look bad on me as your sensei. If you don't want me to teach you anymore because of what I am, then I'll accept that as well. It wouldn't be the first time someone wanted to distance themselves from me after finding out. These decisions are yours to make, Naruto stated. Flashback end. Decisioned. He is waiting for my decision. I'm a heiress. My clan has to come first, but I just can't let him go. I just can't. I'm fearful of that thing inside him, but it's driving me insane to not be near him. She wore it inside her head and rolled over in her bed to stare at the blank wall. A loud knock on the door snapped her out of her thoughts. Yes? She replied in a tired manner. A servant said through the door. There is a Kage scroll of summoning here for you. She blinked in surprise and went to the door and opened it. A Kage scroll? What would the Hokage need to summon me for? She thought out loud to herself. It is not from the Hokage, it is from the Kazekage. The servant stated respectfully as he handed her the scroll. Why would he summon me of all people? She said as she opened the scroll to read it. I do not know, Lady Hanabi. The Kazekage has sent a squad of his umbu to escort you should you accept his summons, he said, and bowed slightly and walked away. She was bemused while heading down to the sitting room near the front door to meet them. Her father had just gotten back from a late meeting with the council and met her before she reached the door. I have heard Gaara summoned you, he said. Yes, father, she replied respectfully. He would not have summoned you without good reason, Hanabi. Make sure you act accordingly, he said, slightly stiffer than normal. Yes, father, she replied. She went out the front door and followed the umbu to a rundown inn on the river. The Kazekage is waiting for you, an umbu with a bird mask on said as he opened the door and motioned her inside. The room he was staying in had a desk and 2 beds. Gaara was doing paperwork when she came in. Hello, Hanabi Hyuga. Please forgive me for summoning you. I hope your father doesn't take offense, he said, and turned around to face her. She bowed and said, Hello, Kazekage, I'm here as you requested. No need to be so formal with me. I wanted to speak with you not as the Kazekage, but as a friend of Naruto's. You can just call me by my name if you like, he said. Yes, Gaara. Why have to summon me? She asked, clearly a little uncomfortable in his presence. Naruto is worried about something. He didn't say anything to me about the matter, but I can tell that he isn't his normal self. He is hiding a great amount of pain and worry. If I'm not being too forward, I was hoping you could tell me what has upset him, he said. Hanabi broke eye contact with him and looked at the floor. I got him. She fumbled with her words. I would not ask, but I owe him so much and I've already asked him for a favor during this exam. I am only trying to repay him, Gaara stated. I'm not sure I'm ready to talk about it, she said, still unable to look him in the eyes. I wonder, how much do you know about Naruto? Gaara asked while watching her reactions carefully. He's told me quite a bit about himself. She stammered. Gaara stared at her for a long moment like he was deciding whether or not to ask his next question. Do you know what a Jinchuriki is? He finally said. Her eyes instantly lock onto him and her look went from scared to sad. Yes, I know about him being the nine-tailed fox's cage. I see, so he has confided in you. He must trust you very much. He stated. Not exactly. I kind of walked in when he was, I don't know. I guess you'd call it fighting it. She said with a long sigh and then explained the entire story to him. I see. You are fearful of him now. That would make any master upset. To a master, their students and the passing on of their knowledge are one of the most important things in the ninja world. When we die, all that is left of us is our memory and our teachings. This is why our students are so important to us. It is the only way for us to live on after we pass away. We live on in the lessons and jutsu we pass on to our students. He said wisely. You talk like Naruto is an old man that doesn't have many years left. I just need some time to accept this. She said shyly. Gaara eyed her again for a long time before finally asking. How much do you know about the seal holding Kyuubi inside of him? Her eyes went slightly wide before she mastered herself again. I know it's the 4th Hokage's 8-trigram seal. I'm afraid you're wrong. The key seal was meant to reform the 8-trigram seal by using a 9-prong seal. The key couldn't reform the seal after Madara nearly broke it. There wasn't enough of it left. It's just a 9-prong seal that's protecting what is left of the original seal. He stated. She gave him a curious look and asked. Wouldn't the 9-prong seal be stronger than the original? I'm afraid not. The 4th Hokage was extremely powerful, but he made the key when he was still alive. He had opened the 8 celestial gates when he made the 8-trigram seal using his entire life's chakra. The key seal does not compare. This is why he made it to reform the original seal instead of replacing it. He said. Naruto told me that a Jinchuriki dies when they are separated from their tailed beast. You mean when the seal breaks he is going to die? How long does he have? She said very worriedly. Gaara sighed and leaned back in his chair as he crossed his arms before he looked at her calmly. At most. 2 years. Hanabi's eyes went wide with a blank look of utter shock. 2. Only 2 years? She thought suddenly very shocked. Gaara waited quietly until she came out of her shock for many moments. Hanabi's hands began trembling in front of her. But he almost had the 9-tailed fox taken from him before and lived. Isn't there a way he might live from it again? Isn't it possible he could fight it and win with the help of the other ninjas? She asked emotionally. He lived because of Itachi Uchiha, Hanabi. He transferred his power to Naruto just before giving up his life to his brother. The power he transferred was the ability to absorb the Sharingan and use it like he was born an Uchiha. He also sealed his strongest jutsu into that power so his brother could never have it. The strongest jutsu of the Sharingan that hasn't been awakened for over 1,000 years until Itachi awakened it. He stated. Hanabi looked at him with her mind a-whirl and asked. What jutsu is it? Gaara gazed bored deep into her eyes. The ability to stop time. Hanabi wore a confused look. But Naruto can already use time/space jutsu. She stated. Time/space jutsu isn't the same as stopping time, Hanabi. He said and grabbed his head in thought like he was struggling with his memories. Gaara sighed and let go of his head. I will try to explain it as Naruto did to me. His yellow flash jutsu doesn't stop time as so many think. What he does is move back in time while he is running toward a target. When he is halfway to where he wants to be, he releases his backward flow of time. For each action there is an equal but opposite reaction. So he starts moving forward in time until he gets to where he wants to be. Here I will explain it as he did to me. Gaara said and pulled out a fresh piece of paper. On it he drew a river with a giant slingshot stretched across the river. He then drew a man at a 45-degree angle from the center of the slingshot. He drew another man on the exact opposite side of the river and then drew a V that started on the first man, hit the center of the slingshot and ended at the other man. At first he starts going backward in time, represented by the river moving forward and him running against its flow to the middle slingshot. He said as he traced the line from the man on one side of the river to the slingshot. He then releases his backward flow on time and sinks into the slingshot that forces him forward in time. He walks, not runs to the other side as the river propelling forward him. He said as he traced the line to the other man on the other side of the river of time. Until he ends up where he wants to be and at the right instant in time. To you or I it looks like he just disappeared and reappeared in another place. But he was actually moving the whole time across the river of time. This is why it is called time/space jutsu. He is moving through time and space at the same time. He stated. Then what is so special about stopping time? She asked intently. There are many rules you have to follow when moving through time. Even moving through the air is deadly in time/space if you do not do it correctly. When moving through time you cannot simply attack your opponent. Your opponent is moving through time at a different rate than you are. It is physically impossible to touch them until you are both moving in the same time and space. This is why he doesn't attack until after he comes out of time/space. If you could stop the river of time you could affect anything within time and space, effectively freezing time. You could stab either 1 or 20,000 ninja through the heart without them ever knowing it until you started time flowing again to devastating effects. The name Sharingan does not mean mirror will eyes as so many others and most of the clan thought. Sharon, in the oldest of the clan's language, means time still and Gan means eyes. So it means time still eyes or the ability to stop time. He stated. Are you telling me Naruto can stop time? She asked in confusion. He only stopped time once. To save Sasuke and reseal the nine-tailed fox. This ended the Fourth Great Shinobi War. This is only base theory though. We will never know all of what happened as Naruto shuns the Sharingan. He said before she cut him off, but why are you telling me all this? I don't understand. She said loudly while covering her head in her hands. The way to stop war is to understand one another. Naruto taught me that. The more you understand about him and what he is trying to do, the less you will war with yourself about how you feel about him. He said kindly and continued speaking. So we do not know if he can stop time again. It is unlikely though from the information we have pieced together. We don't have any accounts of a Jinchuriki letting his seal decay away to release their tailed beast. So we aren't sure if it's the extraction process or the release of the tailed beast that kills the host. As best we can determine, it is the stress on the body and mind when the tailed beast is released. It is simply too much chakra for the body to handle. He will most likely die when the seal is broken. And if he doesn't die, he will likely be in no condition to move, let alone fight. If he can fight, he will likely be severely weakened. Even if he wasn't weakened, for all accounts his only option to save everyone else would be to seal it in another person, and he would still be at a huge disadvantage. Even the fourth Hokage couldn't do any serious damage to Kyuubi. That is why he sealed it. Naruto refused to even look for fourth Hokage's sealing jutsu. He told me he would never subject another living being to the childhood he had. Even if he somehow defeated Kyuubi, it would mostly likely cost him his life. He stated. Hanabi had tears forming in the rims of her now bloodshot milky eyes as she shakily asked. Is there no hope for him? Gaara genuinely smiled at her. Of course there is hope, Hanabi. Naruto has accepted that the odds are indeed stacked against him, but he has not given up. He knows he will probably die before he can fight the nine-tailed fox, but he trains himself night and day because of that sliver of hope. He still intends to win and become Hokage. He has just come to the understanding that it is unlikely to happen. This is why he has taken on students. He has to find the next great Toad Sage within 2 years or less. Neither he nor his master, Jiraiya, has any children. So he cannot hope for someone of the lineage of former Toad Sage to find his disciple. Jiraiya handed the title off to the fourth Hokage, but received his responsibilities back when the fourth died. He searched for over a decade before Naruto forced him after days of badgering him to teach him. Naruto has to find someone whose chakra leans toward the toad animal and train that person to the chakra levels of an elite Chunnin before the seal breaks. Or the toad sage line will likely die with him. He is searching for the person to succeed him. Desperately. Tell me, what was the first jutsu he taught you? Hanabi fought through the despair of feelings she was feeling. The shadow clone jutsu. They both said together. She eyed him in surprise. Naruto taught you a very dangerous jutsu to increase your chakra levels quickly. I bet he even found a way to train you in it safely. You see, he even has hope that someone with the exact opposite of what he needs in a student can become his successor. Yet for the hopeless path before him I have never once heard him complain. Nor has he ever given up on his dreams of becoming Hokage. A more determined man you will never find. He said both kindly and with great understanding. Hanabi clutched her elbows as tears tailed down her face. What am I supposed to do then? She begged him for an answer. You are an heiress bound to your clan and he is likely to die within 2 years. Are you sure you want my advice? He asked her softly with genuine care in his voice. She shrugged her shoulders and said in a hopeless tone. It's not like I have anyone else's advice to turn to now. If you follow my advice, you will likely hurt Naruto greater than you can imagine and you will hurt yourself even worse, but in the long run it is what is best for him. I ask you again. Do you really want my advice on your problem? He said firmly. Hanabi took a long deep breath and said, Yes, please give me your advice. Hanabi was outside Naruto's estate staring at the dungeon-like door with beautiful yellow roses surrounding its frame. She walked up to the handle and took a long deep breath to steeling her nerves. Gaara is right, this is what is best for him, best for both of us. She thought with sad resolve. Good luck. A sand umbu guard said as she opened the door and entered the flower sanctuary of his estate. She slowly picked her way of the cobblestone path that led through the field of flower in the orange skylight of dusk. This reminds me so much of the first time I came here. I was wondering what the inside of his house actually looked like and I was thrilled to finally see it. She thought as she walked by the place where she had stepped off the pathway to get away from the statue of the nine-tailed fox. She passed the 2 statues, one of the 4th Hokages that was sloppily painted and the other that was so lifelike of the nine-tailed fox. She stepped up onto the slight rise of the stone pouch and walked over to the 2 mismatched ornate doors. She took a long breath and let it out. You can do this, Hanabi. It is what is best. She told herself over and over before knocking on the door with false hopes that he wasn't home, but she could feel his presence. She knew he was here and that he was waiting for her. She barely touched the door on her first knock and it opened. Naruto stood at the doorway with a hinge over his eyes that were not his own, trying to hide his depression. It did no good. Hanabi could feel the connection between their heartstring chakra networks. She steadied herself and shakily said, Naruto, I say whatever you want, Hanabi, I have prepared myself for the worst. He thought with resolve. Naruto. I'm sorry. She said, tell me I'm a horrible monster, I can take it. He thought while swallowing. Naruto. I have made my decision. She said, emotional, trying to get her words out. Tell me you have a new master that is better suited to you. I will accept it. He thought as his resolve held firm, though he still couldn't look her in the eyes. Naruto, I am sorry, but... She stammered with fresh tears flowing down her face out of her milky liquid eyes. Tell me you never want to see me again. That you'd rather go your whole life with ever seeing my face again. He thought while cringing. Naruto. She said as her heartstring chakra line lit up, connecting them in both thought and emotion. I can take whatever horrible things you say to me, just tell me. And get it over with. He thought as he cringed away, bracing himself for a blow. Naruto. She said in tears of pain. The words she spoke, Naruto thought he was prepared for. The words she said he thought he could endure. The words she spoke brought the greatest ninja of their time to his knees. A ninja that could move mountains and stop wars between nations was toppled from the words of a 15-year-old girl. He couldn't defend himself from the devastation of her words. "Naruto, I love you," she said as she embraced him like she couldn't live without him while crying. Naruto was on his knees on the porch of his estate with Hanabi's arms around him. Naruto was in excruciating pain while clutching his chest and his breath came in rasps. "How can it hurt this much? It feels like the first time I saw Ino after the accident," he thought as he felt Hanabi's tears hitting him on the top of his head. "Naruto?" Hanabi asked in a shaky voice. "No, I can't as much as I want to accept her feelings. I know I can't, this is wrong." He thought through his pain while drawing one of his kunai and disappeared. "Naruto, no! Don't run from me!" she yelled at him even though he was gone. She cried inconsolably for many minutes until a familiar voice spoke to her. "Come on, Hanabi, I'll take you home," Neji said from up the walkway. Hanabi turned around and looked at her cousin through her puffy swollen eyes and said, "I'm sorry, Neji, I can't go with you," she said while wiping her tears on her sleeve. Neji gave her a confused look. "I already am home," she stated with resolve. Neji shook his head and sighed. "Hanabi, don't be so selfish," he stated. "I'm not being selfish. You may have been branded with the bird in a cage curse mark, but I have been that bird in a cage all my life. This is the first time I'm not doing something for the clan or myself. I'm doing what's best for Naruto and it will likely cost me dearly in the long run," she snapped at him. "And what do you think Lord Hugo will say when he hears of this? Do you think he is just going to let you walk away from your duty to the clan?" Neji stated. "You should have been the heir, not me. And who said I was walking away from my duties to the clan? I will spend the next 2 years training under Naruto. For all he's done for the village, it's the least I can do to make his life a bit happier." She spat at him. 2 years who? And what do you hope to gain in these 2 years? He asked her as he crossed his arms with a sarcastic look. "I hope to comfort him by becoming his disciple. He has to pass on his knowledge and teachings within 2 years," she said in a softer voice. "Ha ha ha. Listen to yourself, Hanabi. Naruto's ninjutsu style and ours are complete opposites. We have a small amount of chakra and use it with precise control. Naruto has a massive amount of chakra and only average control of it. He uses huge jutsu only because he had the brute chakra to do them. He could never control our gentle fist even if he had our eyes. I know your father taught you as you gain more chakra you sacrifice your control over it. If you continue on chakra training you will lose our clan's gentle fist." "What kind of heiress would you been then?" he said in obvious amusement. A strong hand gripped Neji's shoulder from behind. "The sage kind," Gaara said without the slightest flicker of emotion from behind him. Flashback. You are an heiress bound to your clan and he is likely to die within 2 years. Are you sure you want my advice? Gaara asked her softly. She shrugged her shoulders and said in a hopeless tone, "It's not like I have anyone else's advice to turn to now. If you follow my advice, you will likely hurt Naruto greater than you can imagine and you will hurt yourself even worse, but in the long run it is what is best for him. I ask you again. Do you really want my advice on your problem?" he said firmly. Hanabi took a long, deep breath and said, "Yes, please give me your advice." "You are 15, correct?" he asked. "Yes," she replied. "Then I take it you don't have to get married until your 18th birthday under your clan's laws?" he asked. "Yes, that's right," she told him. "Then if I were in your shoes, I would train under him and learn all I could in the time he has left. Even if you're not a ninjutsu type, he might find a way to make you into the next Toad Sage if the untimely happens. If he does passes away fighting the nine-tailed fox, then you have another year to find a suitor for the clan," he said. But I don't want another suitor," she stammered at him. "That doesn't matter, Hanabi. Your clan comes first. If he does perish in battle, you will have to marry another," he said and paused for a moment. "One last thing," he said as his eyes peered at her intently. Hanabi looked at him questioningly. "You have to tell him how you feel about him. And this will likely hurt you both severely. He will most likely flee from you." I don't want to hurt him," she stammered while shaking her head and backing away. "I never said this course of action did not have its share of risk. If you really want the sliver of hope of being with him, you will have to take his Nindo as your own and never give up on him. It will be hard, make no mistake about that, and the odds are against you," he said. Hanabi clutched her elbows and looked at the floor in indecision. She finally looked him in the eyes and asked, "Do you really think we have a chance? If you were going to bet on 1,000 to 1 long shot, can you think of anyone better to place your faith in than Naruto Uzumaki?" he asked empathetically. End flashback. Naruto reappeared on the Hokage monument, clutching his heart on all fours, trying to resist the incredible pain in his chest. This isn't just mental pain, what is it? It feels like Tsunade is squeezing my heart with all her strength," he thought in a panic. He was suddenly infused with some of the Kyuubi's chakra. His heart began beating again and the pain eased. "I told you not to fall in love again, Naruto." Ruby's voice boomed into his head in an almost kind manner for her. "With 3 words she nearly killed you. You are far too weak when you're in love." "So that pain in my chest?" he asked her. "Yes," she stopped your heart with her words. "If I didn't restart it, you would have likely died without the lightning element to restart it yourself," she told him. "You almost sound like you care for me, Ruby. Why did you save me? You know this seal isn't like the other one. If I die, you will probably be free," he told her as he rolled over onto his back and caught his breath while watching the last rays of light fade into darkness. "Make no mistake about that, Naruto. I may become free if you died, but I wouldn't have my revenge on you, your father, and all the ninja that have imprisoned me over the centuries. That, and we already have an agreement should you survive my release. I never said I held a great deal of personal grudge against you, but I will show my children that no mortal will ever again hold me," she said. "What am I going to do now?" he asked himself with his mind on Hanabi. "You're asking for my advice?" Ruby replied. Sure, why not? You are thousands of years old," he said with his mind only half paying attention. "I already gave you my advice. Don't fall in love again and keep training to fight me. I want you at your best for our battle. You should know this by now," she replied as her voice reverberated in his head. Naruto took in a deep breath and let it out slowly. "Yeah, I know. I'm not totally in love with her yet though," he said. You stand on a cliff that towers above the land with her at the bottom of that cliff. You want to fall down to her, and I'm the only thing holding you back. I never pretended to understand what you humans call love, but that sounds pretty close to my understanding of the emotion," Ruby said with the slightest bit of sinisterness in her voice. "I guess you still have a lot to learn then," Naruto said, and then remained quiet for many long minutes. "Tell me something, Ruby, anything to get my mind off my problems for a few moments," he asked her while staring up at the twinkling stars in the sky from the head of the 4th Hokage monument. "I wanted to be released at the last battle you had with the Uchihas. With all of the 5 nations' armies there, I could have fulfilled my ambition of wiping them all out and never having any of them imprison me again," she stated with hatred in her voice. Naruto chuckled slightly and shook his head back and forth. No, tell me something I don't know," he said. "Like what?" she snapped at him. Naruto stared off into the cloudless night at the full moon. "I don't know, how about you tell me about your children?" he asked in a lost manner. "Why should I privilege you with such knowledge?" she asked. Naruto shrugged his shoulders. "I don't know. We rarely talk and you can only talk to me. I figured you might want to just talk about something you cared about for a change," he said. Ruby stayed silent for a long time before finally saying, "It will make no difference in our final battle, I guess." Which of my children would you like to know about? That is if you have even figured out who they are," she said in an unbelieving tone. Naruto gazed out into darkness and said, "Tell me about Shikaku. How did he become the way he was when I fought him?" he asked. "I see. You did figure it out, very well. The one you call Shikaku is my first child and son. Unlike you mortals, my children aren't born from me. They are parts of my being I cut away from myself," she stated. "So Shikaku is actually part of you?" "I'm not sure I understand," he said in a confused manner. "Yes, Naruto. I doubt you would have any idea of the enemies we face. You may think that our greatest foe is you ninjas, but that isn't even close to true. We are eternal. Since we are eternal, we ourselves are our greatest foes," she said. I don't get what you're saying at all, Ruby," he said in utter confusion. "I expected as much. You mortals don't live long enough to know the true dangers of time. When you are eternal, it is a very lonely existence. Who would you confide in or talk to when their lives are barely eye-blinking your existence? We have no one. Our greatest struggle is to remain sane and still exist. Most of us lose this battle and we are driven insane by our own minds. We create our own world in our head rather than living on the one we truly exist in. This drives us insane even though we think we are quite sane in our own head because as your kind would say we aren't living in the real world," she told him. "I don't get all of what you're saying, but I do understand the alone part," he said. How is it best to tell you, you remember the spy Shikamaru caught last year?" she asked. "Yeah, the one I saw in the prison cell a few weeks after he had been imprisoned. He looked totally out of his mind. I wonder what did that to him," he replied. "Time did that to him, Naruto. He was locked away in solitary confinement for 2 weeks. He went inside sane and after 2 weeks of nothing but a dark cell and his own mind he came out nearly insane. This is the effect of time and loneliness on the mind, and even we Eternals aren't immune to its effects," she stated. "What does this have to do with Shikaku though?" he asked her. "You mortals, you ask me to talk and then you complain that I am being long-winded," she stated in a sarcastic voice. Naruto wore a strained expression and said, Sorry, please continue." "As I was saying, even we aren't immune to the effects of time. Long ago I felt I could bear time no longer. I felt I was losing myself in my own mind like I had seen others of my kind do long ago. I did the only thing I could think to do. I created a companion by shearing away part of myself into a new being that you know of today as Shikaku. I lost all memory of the part of myself I cut away, but I finally had someone to speak with, to teach and interact with. Even we Eternals are far from perfect. I cut many of the parts of myself away I didn't like to create him. I took some of my brashness and my wilder side that you might call weird and humors as well as my love of the hunt," she said. Naruto giggled a bit. "What is it?" she yelled at him in an offended voice. "I just can't see you having a humorous side," he said as he fought to regain control of his laughter. Maybe humorous side isn't the word I was looking for then. I guess it's like when you flex in front of the mirror. You wouldn't want others to see you doing it, but you do it in private and you may feel strange about it later on. Something akin to that," she said. Naruto was doing well to not bust up laughing at the mental image of Ruby flexing on her hind legs in front of a mirror. As such, me and my son didn't get along very well. He was unruly and hard to be around. He wouldn't listen to me and annoyed me to no end. If it wasn't for the fact that he was likely keeping me sane enough to exist, I would have simply devoured him. Sometimes I thought insanity was preferable to being around him. One of the few things we did that seemed to make him tolerable was hunting. There was nearly nothing to hunt in the mountain range where we stayed, so I would take him to a forest. He used to call that place the land of little trees. He enjoyed the challenges I set out for him. I'd tell him to hunt a single type of animal and bring it back. Rarely did he fail to complete his task in the time limit, but he was far too destructive in his favorite forest. After a time the forest was gone and nothing was left but sand. Here is when he found a game that kept him busy for centuries. He would try to pick up as many individual grains of sand as he could. At first he was clumsy at it. He was far more used to using brute force instead of finesse that was needed for the task. I watched him spend countless hours playing with the sand until I grew bored and eventually gave up on him as a companion. All he cared for was the sand, and his unseriousness and goofy antics are only interesting for so long. She said. So that's why Gaara was hunting people. It was Shikaku's influence. He said to himself while remembering Gaara saying, "You are my prey." Yes, it was. I saw much of my son's behavior in his host from your memories. After he left I felt time closing in on me again much quicker than the last time, and I shared away another part of my being. Unlike the last time, I cut away parts of myself I liked to make her. Nabi was graceful and powerful. She was always my favorite. We talked often until one day she needed her space as well and left many centuries later. She said, "So you've cut yourself into 9 parts just to have a companion over the years?" He said and thought. 8 times you've divided your soul. Only 7 times. One of the tale. No, I will not tell you that. Ruby said. Naruto laid still in the cool night air staring up at the twinkling stars with his mind trying to process all that Ruby had told him as well as his own problems. After what seemed like hours, Naruto suddenly asked, "How do you feel about me?" He instantly felt an inhuman hatred and killing intent well up in Ruby. "I hate you. I hate this cage that is you. I hate that it was you that killed my prey and resealed me." She roared into his mind with utter fury. Naruto shook his head and sighed. "I know you hate being caged, Ruby. I meant, how do you feel about me as a person? As a being?" He asked as much as he was thinking in the depths of his mind. He could feel her eyeing him in the long moment of silence before she finally said, "You are the strangest and most trusting mortal I've ever met. None of my other hosts ever bared as much of my chakra as you did. They guarded their memories like their very soul depended on it. Yet you let me freely see your memories at great cost to yourself. You strive with great conviction and purpose. You strive toward goals that few of your kind would ever attempt. Truth be told, I'm envious of you and you intrigue me to no end," she said quietly, but very honestly. Naruto cringed at her last words. Words he didn't remember until they were again spoken to him. Flashback. Naruto had fully given himself over to Kyuubi to bring out the 4th tail near the Heaven and Earth Bridge. The sheer power that was released caused his foe to duck to the ground to avoid the massive shock wave of chakra. Orochimaru eyed him intently from the ground as he ducked and said, "This child intrigues me to no end." End of flashback. Naruto thought. In stark realization. Orochimaru told me that too. Yes, he did, didn't he? Orochimaru, he thought like us, but what a fool he was, wishing for eternal life. If he ever stopped to think about what happens after he had fulfilled his ambitions and asked himself, now what? Just like all foolish mortals that wish for everlasting life. They never stop to think what will happen when their life outlasts their ambitions. She stated. "Why would you be envious of me?" he asked. "You seem unable to ask the same question. What then? You have goals and ambitions. We Eternals do not. At first it is easy to keep ourselves occupied, but soon we find ourselves with nothing to do. We have no purpose. We have nothing to drive us. The world is a hollow and empty place to us. To find purpose is what we are always seeking and rarely find," she said. Naruto shook his head and got to his feet. "I guess I'm still an idiot, just like Jiraiya said. I didn't understand most of what you told me, but at least my problems don't seem so bad compared to yours." "Then you understood more than most mortals would have," she said. "Thanks, Ruby," he said as she faded back into his subconscious. Hanabi awoke on the couch in Naruto's living room with the morning rays of light dancing across the carpet from the bay window aquarium. She sat up and rubbed the sleep out of her eyes while looking down the hall. I guess I feel asleep waiting for him to come home. His bedroom door is still open. So he didn't come back last night. She thought as she got up and stretched while looking down the hallway. She headed into the kitchen and said, "What's for breakfast?" The kitchen was silent. Naruto cooking clone was nowhere to be seen. Hanabi stood there staring around until it came to her. "No breakfast?" she yelled loudly. Hanabi decided to dig around in the kitchen to look for something to eat. Pots, pan, cups, dust bunnies? He doesn't he have anything to eat? She said as she looked around frantically while her stomach growled. The only thing she found was some wilted greens in the fridge. She slumped down in dismay. "I'm already starting to regret my decision," she said in dismay while clutching her noisy stomach. She decided she'd take a shower and get something to eat in town if she had to. Hanabi finished drying her hair and getting dressed. She went downstairs to the sounds of a crackling frying pan. She raced the rest of the way to the kitchen and rounded the bend. "Narrate." She stopped in mid-sentence. Shizen was wearing an apron and turned around from her cooking. "Well, if it isn't our AWOL heiress. I hope you slept well on the couch," she said as she smiled and went back to her cooking. "Shizen, what are you doing here?" she asked as she tilted her head in confusion. "I'm making breakfast. I would have woken you up, but I had to go shopping seeing as the sage didn't have any food in the house," she stated casually. Hanabi shook her head back and forth a few times. "No, that's not what I meant. What are you doing here?" she asked while pointing both pointer fingers at the floor. Shizen turned off the stove and turned around. "It seems I'll be living here with you for the next 2 years." Hanabi's eyes glazed over. "Wait, what?" she asked after she regained her thoughts. Shizen giggled slightly and headed into the dining room with 2 plates of food. Hanabi followed timidly. She sat down and asked, "Is father mad at me?" Shizen took her time thinking about it and finally said, "I don't think he's mad, but he was caught off guard. You are growing up faster than he thought you would. He is not going to be sending the clan out to retrieve you if that's what you are worried about," she said as she started eating. Hanabi stared at her blankly before asking, So he agreed to it?" She shrugged her shoulders. "Not at first, but after speaking at length with the Kazekage he finally gave in," she stated and went back to eating. "Gaara? Gaara talked to him on my behalf?" she asked in disbelief. She nodded her head and finished the food in her mouth. "Yes, they spoke for over 2 hours. In the end your father agreed as long as the sage agrees to it. But there isn't any way father would agree to this without some sort of compensation. It goes against his political nature," Hanabi said. Shizen smiled at her. "I believe Gaara already took care of that, but I don't know what that compensation was. They spoke in private. You had best eat, you only have an hour to get to the second task." Hanabi's mind was still a whirl as she checked over her equipment at the front door. She was still trying to absorb the fact that her father agreed to let her stay with Naruto just like that. She also was worried about what Gaara traded for such a favor. She took a long time marveling over the blue kunai before holstering it. She finally opened the door and headed out. Naruto and Neji were talking at the flower-covered arch of his estate door. Naruto was wearing his ceremonial sage robes. They looked exactly like his normal ones, but from the left shoulder to the right hip the words Toad Sage was written in broad letters angling across his back. Over the right shoulder were the names of all his teachers in order. Iruka Umino, Kakashi Hatake, Jiraiya of the Sannin, Fukasaku the Elder Toad Sage, Tsunade of the Sannin and 2 other names that were sloppily sewn under them that read Might Guy and Rock Lee. "You really think the second task is going to be that hard?" Naruto asked. "Yes, they have something special planned for the second task. That's all I can tell you what though," Neji told him with a reserved smile. "Ah damn, that's not fair. I hate being held in suspense," he yelled, and then they both laughed. "Naruto, I'm ready to leave," she said meekly. Naruto looked over at her with a cheerful smile, but she could tell something was off about it. Then let's go, he said as he raised his arm in front of him and pointed down the street enthusiastically. He walked ahead of them and Hanabi leaned over to Neji and whispered, "What's got him in such a good mood?" Neji smiled at her and whispered back, "You." She blushed feverishly as her mind went into a chaos of thoughts. Hanabi still hadn't completely mastered herself when they got to the training ground for the second task. The training ground was nothing but a large open paved area with a fence around it. It was noisy and soon everyone was formed up into rows waiting for the instructor to arrive. "Is that who I think it is?" one ninja said quietly to his teammate. "Yeah, that's him all right. He was in the same testing room as us during the first part of the exam. If you see him during this test, run away or forfeit. He's on a whole other level." Another ninja said. "What do those names on his uniform mean?" another asked. A leaf ninja near them said, "Those are all his teachers. No way. Kakashi, the legendary copy ninja, Jiraiya of the Sannin, and the Hokage herself? How are we supposed to compete against him?" a ninja said. "To put it bluntly, follow your friend's advice, run or forfeit," the leaf ninja said. "And no talking. Wait quietly until the proctor of the exam arrives," one of the instructors yelled. The minutes ticked by in silence. 1 minute, 0.5, then 10 minutes, and after 15 minutes the ground in front of them filled with a huge sand dune. The sand shrank back into the earth and Kazekage Gaara stood before them. Next to him was a small table with a stack of different colored scrolls stacked in a pyramid. "Hello everyone. I'll be the proctor for this part of the second task," he said in his calm, eerie voice. Whispers could be heard throughout the crowd of ninjas. "No way. The Kazekage is our proctor? I bet this is going to be way harder than the first task," another whispered with a hint of dread in his voice. "First let us get a mix-up cleared away before we start with the second exam." There was only supposed to be 35 squads that made it to this point. We currently have 36. Instead of outing a squad, we have decided to combine a squad of 1 and a squad of 2 members that made it through the first round. Squad 7 of the Land of Fire and Squad Disciple of the Land of Wind will be combined for second task. If anyone has a problem with this, they are welcome to forfeit their own squad's place to correct the mistake, he stated. No one spoke as silence reigned. "Good, now try as we might, we couldn't come up with a single task for all of you. There is just too many of you at different levels. We decided to give some of you much harder tasks than the others. If you look to my right, you will see the mission scrolls. 22 of them are white," he said, pointed at the bottom of the pyramid. 7 are blue, 5 are red, and 2 are black. The white scrolls are for the least experienced. The blue are for the slightly more experienced. The red are for the seasoned Chunnin, and the black are A and BU level tasks. Only your Kage or Jonin instructor could put forth your name for a red or a black scroll, as they are highly dangerous tasks, he stated. More than a few ninjas eyed the scrolls, nervously hoping not to get one of the colored scrolls. "Those of you in the first 6 rows to the left, come and take a white scroll and head to 44th Training Ground for further instruction on your task," he said with his open hand out. The squads of ninja took their scroll and left quietly. Next, I will tell you that these tasks have multiple parts. Some of them have as few as 2 parts, some have as many as 5 parts. These tasks are ones your Jonin instructors have put forth for you, and they have been agreed to by our councils. Each task is different and meant to challenge you in a number of ways. Part of the task is to figure out what we are testing you on. Those in the next row, please come when your name is called for a blue scroll," he said. They came and got their scroll and were instructed to another training ground. "When I call your squad, please come and get your red scroll." Again the squads came and got their scrolls. Konohamaru gave Naruto a smile as he went to get his squad's red scroll. Naruto gave him a proud smile back. Soon only Naruto, Hanabi, Matsuri, and 3 water ninja monks were left on the training ground. Each of the water ninjas towered over Naruto. They wore clay-colored uniforms and carried large wooden beads around their neck. All of them had shaved heads. Now for the final and hardest of the tasks, Squad 2 of the Land of Water. Takia, please come forward, Gaara said loudly. The tallest and most muscled of the water ninjas came forward and took the scroll with both hands and bowed. Thank you. You may open yours and head to your starting point, Gaara told him. He opened his scroll and quickly left with his comrades. Gaara waited for them to leave before slamming his hand down on the table. The final black scroll flipped into the air and landed in his other hand. Squad 7 of the Land of Fire, your first task is to get this scroll from me. You only have 1 hour, he said as his body started turning to sand. You only get 1 clue. I am with what you fight hardest for. He said as his sand clone fell into a pile of sand on the ground. What does that mean? Hanabi asked while she blinked a few times. I don't know, Matsuri said in a bemused state. Naruto was eyeing the pile of sand on the ground intently. The riddle is obviously for one of us, but which one? He asked himself aloud. Hanabi, he said. Yes? She replied. What do you fight hardest for? He asked her intently. She blushed slightly and stammered. I guess I fight hardest for my clan. Gaara did speak to your father at length last night. He could have set this up. Then, he said in thought. Matsuri, he said. Yes, she replied nervously. Oh, I guess I fight hardest for Gaara, she said in an embarrassed manner. Gaara is always with himself. I fight for the peace of the 5 nations and he's already in the Land of Fire. So, he said in thought. We're going to the Hyuga compound? Hanabi asked curiously. Unless either of you have a better idea. It doesn't seem like the right answer to me, but it's all I can come up with, he said with unknowing look. Matsuri shrugged her shoulders. Then let's go. It's not very far away. If it's wrong we will still have plenty of time to check somewhere else, he said as he headed out. They were going up the winding road to the Hyuga compound at a near sprinting pace. Slow down, Naruto. I think my legs are about to fall off, Hanabi said in protest while panting with her hands braced on her knees. She is your student and she is in this bad of shape? Matsuri asked in disbelief to Naruto. I've only been training her for a month. Come on, Hanabi, we are almost there. Don't complain, he stated. She took a few breaths that burned in her lungs and struggled to get back upright. They reached the gate and headed into the compound. I don't feel Gaara's chakra here. We should still have a look around just in case he found a way to mask his chakra, Naruto said while scanning the grounds. Right, Hanabi and Matsuri said. They quickly surveyed the area until they came to the garden behind the main house. The cherry blossoms were in full bloom and their petals littered the ground. The air was thick with their smell. The only people they found was Lord Hyuga and Neji sitting on a bench feeding the fish in one of the ponds in the garden. Crap, Naruto said and hung his head. He's not here. Where else could he be? Where could who be? Neji asked him curiously. Naruto slumped his shoulders. Gaara. Our first task is to find him and get a scroll. He gave us a hint, but all of our answers to it were different. We tried here first because it seemed like the best of the 3 answers, he said. What was your hint, Hanabi? He father asked calmly. She stopped rubbing her sore legs and said, I am with what you fight hardest for. Her father smiled at her. You are looking at the problem wrong. All good ninjas fight the hardest for the same thing, whether they know it or not. Matsuri eyed him carefully. So it's a philosophical question then. Naruto eyed him in confusion. I'm looking at it wrong, he told himself. Hanabi was lost in thought. Something I would fight hardest for, Naruto, obviously, maybe it's an item that's worth a lot of money. Something can't be bought with gold or coins, those are the most valuable. People's lives are the most valuable. But which lives are the most valuable? Flashback. Hanabi was in a small dark room with Gaara talking to her in front of an old desk. To a master, their students, and the passing on of their knowledge are one of the most important things in the ninja world. When we die, all that is left of us is our memory and our teachings. This is why our students are so important to us. It is the only way for us to live on after we pass away. We live on in the lessons and jutsu we pass on to our students. Gaara said wisely. Flashback end. Hanabi stood in silence as she thought. Students, where are the most important students in the village? She thought out loud. Her eyes went wide as Naruto's did, and they said the same thing. The king! Matsuri looked at them in utter confusion. Naruto looked over at her. No time to explain. It's on the other side of the village. We have to go if we are gonna make it, he said as he grabbed both their arms and flew off in perfect Gai-sensei fashion. Thanks for the advice, he yelled back before he was out of sight. Niji looked over at Hayashi and asked, You think they will pass this test? He pulled a black scroll out of his robes. They still have a long way to go before they can pass. The Kages really outdid themselves this year. Naruto was flying through the crowded village with Matsuri and Hanabi flapping behind him like rag dolls. Can't we just run across the roofs? Hanabi yelled through the turbulence of Naruto's full-on sprint on the sides of the buildings that led down the main street. No, because it's off-limits during the testing, he yelled back. Hanabi was screaming for her life and Matsuri's eyes were rolling back into her head for nausea. Naruto made it to the academy in record time. Hanabi was panting on the ground, rubbing her shoulder from her near-death experience, while Matsuri crawled up onto all fours and emptied the contents of her stomach onto the ground. Matsuri curled up into a ball on the ground and said, Stop the world, I want to get off. Hanabi was still trying to catch her breath and winced as she touched her shoulder. Okay guys, let's go, he said as he marched toward the front door. Naruto, Matsuri said from her prone position. If we are going to be fighting Master Gaara for the scroll, I think it would be wise if you healed me enough to see straight. Naruto looked back and saw the state the two were in. He scratched the back of his head innocently and said, Yeah, I guess that would be a good idea. He placed one of his hands on her stomach and the other on her shoulder. Green healing chakra emerged from his hands. Matsuri's clenched teeth relaxed until she was breathing normally. Tsunade taught you that? It's no wonder she took you on as a student, she said, feeling as though nothing had happened. Naruto headed over to Hanabi, who had propped herself up to a tree trunk, and looked back at Matsuri. I'm barely average as far as a medic goes in healing. Tsunade always called me a screw-up and told me I had no talent for medical ninjutsu, he said as he leaned down to inspect Hanabi. He reached over to her shoulder that she was clutching. No! Don't touch it. Just heal it like you did for Matsuri, she protested. I'm sorry, Hanabi, he said softly as he raised his hand and started healing her torn shoulder muscle. The way he said that, he wasn't just apologizing for my arm, she thought. It took him much longer to heal Hanabi than it did Matsuri. How do you feel? He asked her. She rotated her arm a few times and said, It is still a little stiff, but I am fine. I think we should come up with a plan of attack to get the scroll from Gaara, Naruto said as he sat down under the tree by Hanabi. He has a huge tactical advantage here, Matsuri said as she sat down near them. Very true, Matsuri. With so many students here, it cuts down all my best jutsu that could break his sand shields, Naruto said. And he has had time to prepare the field, which gives him another advantage, Matsuri replied. You really think he's here? Hanabi asked. Naruto glanced over at her and said, Yes, he is on the training field behind the school. I can feel his chakra. Hanabi eyed him and asked, How far away can you feel a person's chakra? Depends on the person and how well I know their chakra, Normally I can only sense a person's chakra within about 300 meters. But I can extend my sensory to encompass the whole village if I need to," he said casually. "So that's how you always know when people are near you." "Wait a minute. You mean you could have sensed where Gaara was back at the training field?" she yelled at him. Naruto looked at her very seriously and said, "Hanabi, this is just like a mission. We do not waste chakra. Also, if I did that, we wouldn't have the answer to the riddle." Hanabi crossed her arms and scowled at him. "So we need to figure out how to attack Gaara," she said angrily at Naruto. "Seems simple enough. You have fought him before. What is his weak point?" Hanabi asked. "Gaara's main jutsus are based around earth and wind, so lightning would be his main weakness. He's also injured, so we can't attack his chest," Naruto said. "He's injured? What is he doing being our proctor then?" Hanabi asked intently. Naruto leaned his head back and watched a flock of birds fly by. "Because of me, obviously. I bet he volunteered for it. Even I don't know that, Naruto. He didn't tell me any of this. I do know of something we may be able to use as a weak point though," she said bashfully. "And?" Hanabi said curiously. She touched her pointer fingers together nervously and said, "Well, you see, he's actually—" "Spit it out already, we don't have a lot of time, Matsuri," Naruto said impatiently. Right, he's ticklish," she finally said. "I have to be very careful when I change his bandages or he will burst out laughing." Naruto fell backward in a roar of laughter. Hanabi couldn't suppress her snickering as well. "Hey, it's not funny. He's been protected by the sand all his life. It is no wonder he has such sensitive skin," she said in annoyance. "Well, I guess we can use that to make a plan of attack. It's not destructive, so it should be safe to use here without endangering anyone. I can strip off most of the sand from his body, but it will take all my concentration. You two are going to have to go in for the attack." Hanabi and Matsuri looked at each other with strained expressions. "We have to go in for the attack?" Matsuri said, clearly unhappy about it. Hanabi thought for a moment and then smiled. "Why don't we recruit the king to help us?" Naruto smiled back at her. "That's actually a great idea. Come on." Naruto led them down the hall to classroom 3A. They quietly snuck inside where all the students were reading a book. He stalked his way over to Irika-sensei, who was grading papers. "Psst, Irika-sensei," Naruto said from a couched position behind his desk. He glanced down beside his desk and jumped ever so slightly. "Don't do that, Naruto. Can't you just come in and not sneak up on me for once?" he whispered loudly. "Hey Irika, can I borrow the class?" he asked. Irika folded his arms together and sighed. "I guess, I always get outvoted on this kind of thing anyway. No teaching them forbidden jutsu unless you have the Hokage's permission though." He smiled at him and stood up. "Okay class, it's time for another Naruto lesson," he said loudly. The sound of books being dropping onto desks sounded throughout the room, followed by Naruto getting swarmed by students all talking at once. Matsuri leaned over to Hanabi and asked, "Is it always like this?" "Yes, and don't underestimate them. Naruto has been giving them lessons and helps teach them from time to time. He is surprisingly effective at mobilizing them into fighting force." Hanabi replied knowingly. "Okay, silence," Naruto yelled, and everyone finally stopped talking. "I need you guys' help. This is the biggest mission I've ever given you all. We are going to defeat one of the 5 Kages," Naruto said with a smile. Irika's face faltered from his shocking words. Gaara was standing in the middle of the training field directly behind the academy, waiting quietly. He's only has 18 minutes left. He should be here any time if he has figured out the riddle, Gaara thought to himself, as gust of wind blew and knocked his formal Kazekage hat off his head. Gaara he eyed it carefully before he reached down to pick it up and... "Now!" Matsuri yelled. Naruto summoned a massive vortex of wind that stripped off most of Gaara's sand armor as the students from the academy charged out the back door yelling their battle cry. Chuchi Chuchi Ku! They charge him with outstretched hand intent on tickling him mercilessly with a huge dust cloud behind them. Gaara saw the impending attack and started summoning more sand from the ground to reform his armor when he was struck from behind. Hanabi hit him in the back of his left hamstring with her gentle fist. There was nearly no damage done to him, but it was enough to distract him just long enough for the students to get their hands on him. Ha ha ha. Gaara yelled from the bottom of the dog pile of students. It was hard to tell if he was laughing or screaming. Most of them were keeping him prone with laughter while two others were searching him awkwardly for the scroll. A fiery red head darted away with a black scroll in his hands. Commander Matsuri! Mission success! He yelled loudly as he ran up to her at the side of the building. He handed her the scroll and she yelled to the students still tickling Gaara. Mission complete, you guys. No more picking on the Kazekage. Most of them threw their hands up and cheered. Yeah. We beat a Kage. Naruto jumped down from the roof and they all lined up. Okay, what did we learn today? He asked them. A short girl said that even the Kazekage isn't immune to a tickle attack. Naruto joined in with everyone else giggles. Yes, that is true, but what else did we learn? That girls are just as good at leading a mission as boys are. A blue-eyed blonde girl with her hair braided said while looking at the spiky red-headed boy. Yeah, you keep thinking that, Haruki. The boy replied and stuck out his tongue at her. You're still a fathead Rookian. She said back. Okay. Anyone else care to try? He said, trying to calm them down. No one spoke up for a long time. Even a Kage can be toppled by an army. Hanabi said. Naruto smiled at her. Exactly. Now back inside and good work. They all cheered and went back inside except Rookian and Haruki. Naruto kneeled down in front of them and said, Okay. Let's see how far you've come. Rookian smiled and pulled out a water balloon. He held it out and concentrated as hard as he could. He spun the water in the balloon so fast in one direction that it leveled it out into a saucer before finally breaking. Ha! Pretty good, who? He said, clearly proud of himself. Haruki scowled at him and then grinned. She said, I can break the balloon faster than him. Just watch. She held out her balloon and concentrated. At first nothing happened and then she suddenly shifted the water quickly to one side, popping the balloon. Naruto nodded his head. Haruki, you're doing it wrong. The purpose of this exercise isn't just to pop the balloon. You have to do it the way I did. Rookian, you're on the right track, but your balloon didn't pop the same way mine did. He said kindly. Ah. Can we see you do it again? He said, handing him a water balloon. He smiled and took the balloon and stood upright. Watch carefully. Remember what it looks like just before it explodes. Naruto drew his chakra into the balloon. Its surface became pointy in all directions before exploding and showing them with water. That's so cool. I wonder what the jutsu is going to look like when we master it. Will you show us, please? He begged. Naruto thought about it for a moment. Tsunade didn't say I couldn't show them what I was teaching them. What the heck, I guess I'll show them. It helped me when I was trying to learn it. Naruto held out his hand and said, This is a master rank ninjutsu and the only master rank ninjutsu that isn't elemental. Naruto formed a perfect ball of whirling blue chakra in his hand and slammed it into a nearby tree trunk. Rasengan. The ball of chakra ate deep into the tree trunk before he released it. Wow, it almost left a perfect hole in the tree. That was so cool. Rookian said while jumping up and down in excitement. This is the fourth Hokage's jutsu, isn't it? Haruki said in a bemused state. Naruto smiled at her. Yes, it is. The ninjas that come before us leave us their jutsu. This is one of the fourth Hokage's. I learned it from his master that later became my master, Jiraiya. Come here you two, I'm going to give you something that should help you. They timidly step up to him as he pulled out a writing brush. He took their right hands and painted a swirl on them. Concentrate your power on that mark. Now back to class, he told them as he patted them on the shoulders. They looked at the mark on their hand and went back to their classroom slightly confused. Gaara was panting on the ground and pushed himself back to his feet. I don't know what is more surprising. The fact that you used kids to get the scroll, or the fact that you didn't figure out that all you had to do was answer the riddle to get it. Gaara said as he looked sourly at his crumpled hat. What? You mean? Naruto said before falling over from disbelief. Hanabi scowled at him and said, Naruto, you knucklehead. Gaara said while clutching his chest. Gaara, are you okay? Matsuri said before charging up to him. Gaara held up his hand to stop her. I'm fine. I'm just a little sore. Commander Matsuri, you have achieved quite a high rank in the last hour, he said, giving her an amused smile. And it was Naruto's idea to let me lead this part of the task. I had the most knowledge about you. The kids kind of gave me that rank, she said shyly. Gaara smiled at her, a very rare smile. I'm very proud of you. Even though it was unnecessary, it was still quite impressive. He turned to Naruto that had just picked himself off the ground and was mumbling himself about being tricked. So Naruto, what is the answer to the riddle? He asked. Naruto looked over at Hanabi. The next generation, she said. Gaara raised an eyebrow. So it was Hanabi that figured it out? Yes, and it was mainly her and Matsuri that planned out the attack on you. Sorry, I thought we had to fight you to get the scroll, Naruto said innocently. I see, that's why you used the students here, you used the answer against me, he said with amusement. I didn't think you would use any jutsu if you were rushed by them, he replied. Gaara nodded his head. You certainly live up to your reputation as Konoha's most unpredictable ninja, he said. Congratulations, the scroll is yours, he stated as he tossed the black scroll to Matsuri. Well, open it, Matsuri, Naruto said. She opened the glossy black scroll and read it aloud. I am with who you have fought hardest for. I wonder what that means, she said in confusion. Naruto looked up to the wispy clouds in the sky while remembering his fight at the Valley of the End. Naruto? Hanabi asked. He shook off his memories and looked over at her. This answer is different for each of us. I know who I've fought hardest for, it's Gaara, Matsuri said while looking around at the empty field. Where did he go? She asked in confusion. It looks like part of the next task is to find him, at least for you it is, Hanabi said. I know my answer. Do you know yours, Hanabi? Naruto asked her. She nodded her head at him. I think mine is the easiest to guess. We are going to have to split up then. Shadow Clone Jutsu, he said, and 2 clones appeared next to him. I'll send a clone with each of you, he said. Naruto picked his way across town at a slow pace with his mind on what he would have to do to get the next scroll. He arrived at a white house with red trim that was faded from years of weathering. He stepped up to the door and heard, Come in, Naruto. He opened the door to the dark house. There were 2 cups of steaming tea on the plain table. Sasuke was sitting in front of one of the cups with his eye sockets covered by a white cloth, and he motioned Naruto to the chair by the other. I've been expecting you, Sasuke said. Yes, I would guess you have, he said as he took his seat. I take it training has still stalled, he asked with his hands around his cup of tea and took a sip. I've gotten my clones back up to where they were, but yes, there is still no change in my progress, he said as he took a drink of the tea and choked. Erg! What is this stuff? It tastes like an ice cream experiment gone horribly wrong, he said in protest. It's pepsin leaf tea. It's supposed to aid in digestion, or so Sakura tells me, he replied with slight amusement. It's disgusting is what it is. He replied and pushed the drink away from him. Sasuke gave him a slight chuckle. I agree with you, but if it makes Sakura feel better then it is a small price to pay for all her help. Naruto nodded in agreement. So what is the task to get the next scroll from you? He asked. Sasuke placed the black scroll in the center of the table and said, No task. They wanted me to test your knowledge of elemental ninjutsu, but I think we both know that is an act in futility. Instead, tell me how things are going with your students. He asked. I rather miss teaching Konohamaru the way I used to. I handed his training over to the Monkey Clan. They are taking up the bulk of his training now. He said. And what of the Hyuga girl Hanabi? Is she still parading around as your girlfriend? He asked as he took another sip of tea. And that's kind of tricky to answer. We are kind of at a crossroads. He said. Sasuke wore a confused expression. I know this has been a big prank to you, could it be you're actually starting to like her? He asked. Whether I like her or not isn't the point, she's in love with me. He said honestly with worry in his voice. It's probably just teenage love. I'm sure you have seen it before. It will pass. He said in a dismissing tone. Huh. If only it was that simple to discount. That forbidden medical jutsu erased all thoughts of doubt in me. She really is in love with me. He said and looked at the floor in sadness. I see. Sasuke said. So that jutsu is a double-edged sword even for you? Yes, I guess it is. Naruto replied and nodded his head. So what will you do now? Sasuke asked. Naruto shrugged his shoulders. If what Neji said is true then I will devote more time to training her. I have to pass on my Toad Sage title. She is far from ideal for this, but my time grows shorter every day. I just can't pass up on a student even if she isn't ideal. He said. What will you do if she is unfit to become a Toad Sage? He asked. Naruto looked away from him and said. Then are two others I will consider testing. They are probably too young though. They remind me of us back in the day. They're bitter rivals and feed off each other's successes and failures just like we used to. He said nostalgically. Are you talking about Rukian and Haruki by chance? He asked. Yes, I'm surprised you remembered their names. He said. You are right. They are too young. Imagine a 13-year-old running around with the power of a sage if you succeeded? He said. Naruto looked back over at him and said. I was only 16 when I became a sage. You were far more mature than most any 16-year-old when it came to using your powers in battle. You would have never used your jutsu on another without just cause. That type of maturity only comes with experience and time. Don't you have any other prospects? Surely out of the whole land of fire there is another you could teach. Sasuke said. Maybe there is, but I have no guarantee on finding them in time. I have to train the best students I can find and right now it's Hanabi and them. He said. And what if you can't train someone to take your place? I hope you have planned for that. He said as he took another sip of tea. Naruto's face became saddened as he looked down and said. Yes, I've planned for that as well. If that happens I will leave the Toad Scroll to Konohamaru. I know he's not a sage yet and when he becomes one he will have to put finding the next monkey sage ahead of the toads, but it's the best plan I can come up with for now. I see. You have started to use your head much more effectively over the years. He replied. I didn't have much of a choice if I wanted to teach others. They don't have Kyuubi to bail them out if they mess up. He said in agreement. It's too bad you lean toward the snake and hawk. Otherwise I could train you to find the next Toad Sage. He said with a smile. Yes, just as you are like your master, I am like mine. He replied. Naruto cringed at his words. Sasuke chuckled softly. I know you hate when I speak of him, but he was my master. I would have never told him that back then, but I'm far more mature now. I don't know if I would take your teachings even if I hadn't decided to stop being a ninja," he said honestly as he handed Naruto the scroll. "Finish the exams and then worry about who the next Toad Sage will be." Naruto took the scroll from him and said, "Thanks, I'll try to keep you posted on my progress." Sasuke nodded at him as he left with the scroll. Naruto returned to Training Ground 42. Soon Hanabi showed up with his clone and a black scroll in her hand. "Well, this part was rather easy. Return to where you started. I hope the next task isn't going to be on the other side of town. My legs are already killing me," she said as she sat down on the ground and massaged her legs. "Did you have any trouble getting the scroll from your father?" he asked. She scowled at him. "He bombarded me with political questions for over an hour. My head hurts almost as bad as my legs. I hope Tsunade gave you just as much hell getting your scroll," she said with venom in her voice. Naruto's eyebrows raised and fell as he said, "Actually, I didn't get my scroll for Tsunade, I went to see Sasuke." Her eyes narrowed at him. "And what did you have to do to get the scroll from him?" She spat at him. He shrugged his shoulders casually. "We just talked for a while," he admitted. Just talked for a while?" she said in offense. "You should have been dragged through hell too. How come you didn't get tested? Damn sages and your special treatment." Naruto spoke to her calmly and said, "You have already heard my stories about Sasuke. I chased him for years trying to save him from himself and Madara. I ended the Fourth Great Ninja War and brought him home. What test could he give me that could compare?" Hanabi instantly regretted her outburst and looked at the ground. Her body language alone told how sorry she was. "I apologize. I shouldn't have said that. Forgive me," she said as she looked up at his blue orbs. He tilted his head slightly at her and gave her an understanding smile. "It's okay. I know you get a bit moody when we're late for lunch. It's already past noon and we still have at least one more task to go. I hope Matsuri gets here soon," he said as a loud explosion reverberated from nearby. Konohamaru was running for his life with Moegi slung over his left shoulder and Udon flailing out behind him like a rag doll with 4 Umbu in hot pursuit. One of the Umbu chasing him was throwing kunais with exploding tags at him that he was barely avoiding, and another of them had stopped to make hand signs. "Almost there! Almost there! Almost there!" Konohamaru shouted to himself through the explosions as he headed for the area near Naruto and Hanabi. Hanabi was having a déjà vu watching them. She put her head in her hands and said, "He really is just like you." Naruto smiled and scratched the back of his head innocently and said, "Yeah, I guess he is, isn't he? Water style, water dragon bullet jutsu." The Umbu with the cat mask said as a huge water dragon emerged and tore its way toward its prey. Konohamaru heard the jutsu going off and looked behind him. "Ah!" he said as he darted to and fro trying to avoid it. The jutsu followed his every move until he finally managed to get back to the place where he was standing just hours ago right as the jutsu exploded, showing them with water. He was thrown to the ground and Moegi was sent bouncing across the pavement with Udon skidding to a halt behind him. Konohamaru took 3 sharp breaths and was instantly up on his feet while pointing at the 4 Umbu. "AHHA, we won! We protected the scroll all the way back to the starting point," he yelled at them. Udon was nearly knocked out and said, "How can he still have enough energy to stand, let alone yell with all we have been through?" Moegi breathlessly said from the ground. "I don't know." The Umbu kept stalking Konohamaru and stopped 50 feet away. They suddenly huddled up and began talking. "He didn't go back to Training Grounds 8 like he was supposed to," the Umbu in the cat mask said. "Well, this is where he got the first scroll," the Umbu with the snake mask said while trying to catch her breath. But I spent all morning setting up those traps and he just ran the other direction," the Umbu with the elephant mask stated in disappointment. "True, but instead of 800 meters of traps he dealt with us for 14 kilometers of pursuit," the Umbu with a dog mask said. Konohamaru let his hand fall to his side, clearly perplexed. "Hey! I can hear you, he said angrily as he stomped his foot. They continued speaking like he wasn't there. He did show great use of the shadow clone jutsu. He threw us off several times and Udon helped him with strategy, no doubt. The cat-masked man said. True, but Moegi didn't help much during the second part of the task. The man with the elephant mask said. The man in the dog mask stated. Yes, but she was the one that figured out the first task. The others nodded in agreement. I'm talking to you guys. Where's our next scroll? Konohamaru yelled at them. Next scroll? Udon said in dismay, barely looking up from the ground. I hope there isn't another scroll. I'm starting to like the idea of staying a Chunnin. If there is another scroll, you better forfeit, Konohamaru, Moegi said from the ground. Naruto and Hanabi were watching intently. Even when he did throw us off the trail, his yelling was a dead giveaway as to where he was heading. The man in the elephant mask stated. Like hell, I'll forfeit. Konohamaru shouted at his teammates. The woman in the snake mask was still panting from the chase and said, If you guys want to keep chasing them all the way back to training ground 8, be my guest. I vote we pass them. And you owe me dearly for helping you with this. She directed at the man in the cat mask. Moegi managed to pull herself up to a sitting position and started healing the scrapes on her elbows from the fall. The man in the elephant mask said, I vote no on passing them. They didn't return to the right starting point and Konohamaru practically did the whole second part of the task while carrying his teammates. That is not teamwork. The man in the dog mask told the man in the cat mask. It's your call, but you're the leader after all. The man in the cat mask looked at them for a long moment. Very well. I have the results of your test and, he said as he turned to them. Konohamaru was on the edge of his seat waiting for his answer. The man in the cat mask removed his mask. Kakashi had his Sharingan activated and said, You passed. Yeah, woohoo! We passed. Konohamaru said as he leaped high into the air. How the hell does he have so much energy left after all that? Udon said as Moegi crawled up to him and started healing him. 2 words, Naruto Uzumaki. Moegi said sourly. However, I will tell you too. Udon and Moegi, I think you should refrain from the third task this year. Kakashi said. The competition is too stiff this year. I feel it is an unnecessary risk. He said. What do you think, Udon? Moegi asked. Udon got up to his feet. Kakashi only has our best interest at heart, but... Like hell! Konohamaru yelled. Who cares if we might get hurt? You can't run away from a mission, and if it's harder than the other exams, it just means you have that much more right to call yourself a Chunnin when you win. Naruto would never back down, and you guys shouldn't either. If they knock you down, you just have to have the guts to get up and keep fighting no matter how much it hurts. Kakashi looked over at Naruto and he smiled. Well said, apprentice. I really hope one day he will call me that. Hanabi thought. Naruto walked over and placed his hand on Konohamaru's shoulder. Good job on completing the second task and for being a leader to your group. Just leading isn't the only thing you need to do as a leader. There will be many times in the future where you will need to inspire your team as well as lead. To become the strongest and more inspiring ninja in the village, that is our dreams, Konohamaru. He said like a wise old sage. I'm not going to quit, Konohamaru. I don't care what Kakashi says. Moegi said with resolve. Being a leader sometimes means steering your comrades away from unnecessary danger as well. Kakashi said. Well, Udon? Konohamaru asked him. Udon got back to his feet and looked to the sky. I'm going to drop out of the third task. Konohamaru's eyes narrowed at him, and just as he was about to start yelling at him, Udon held up his hand to quiet him. I'm not dropping out because I'm afraid of getting hurt. You two have been leading me behind in skill for a while now. Ever since you started training under Naruto in earnest. He said, and he turned to look at Moegi. And ever since you started training under Sakura. I think it's time I too find my own master to train under, he said firmly. But we fought so hard to get this far? How can you? Naruto stopped Konohamaru's advance. Sometimes it's harder to walk away from a fight than it is to fight it. Konohamaru, let it go. He is still searching for his path. Naruto told him. But if he needs a master, I'll find one for him, he said, clearly hurt and mad at Udon. That's not the way it works, Konohamaru. A student has to choose their master and the master has to choose them. You can't find his master for him. It is something he will have to do alone, he said, trying to calm him. After he stared daggers at Udon for a long moment, he walked away alone. Udon, wait up. Moegi chased after him. It's always like this. I'm holding the team back. I'm just not pulling my weight as always. Konohamaru is always picking up the slack for me. I just don't want to be that kind of ninja anymore. Udon said more to himself than anyone around him as he looked at the ground. You sound a lot like Sakura did just before she decided to train under Tsunade. Go! Find your master and train until you can stand beside them again, Naruto told him. But I don't even know where to start looking for my master, he said hopelessly. Naruto sighed and said, Jiraiya told me something once long ago. It was an old saying. When the student is ready, the master will appear. When he told me that, I thought it was just bravado, but the more I look back on it, the more it seems true. I guess the only answer I can give you is to just start looking. Udon turned and walked several paces away before turning back. He said, Thanks, Naruto. When I return to them, I'll be a different man. Naruto nodded at him. You're certainly living up to your title of a sage, Naruto, Gaara said as he walked up with Matsuri. I take it you got the scroll from Gaara? He asked Matsuri. She held it up for him to see. It took her longer than expected. Sorry we are late, he said as he took his place beside the empty scroll table while Matsuri went back to Naruto's side. Gaara straightened himself up and reached down into the sand that his jutsu left that morning and pulled out the black scroll he left there. It seems you are ready for the final task, he stated as he held out the scroll. Naruto's face faltered. He quickly picked himself off the ground. So you mean all we had to do was get the first scroll that the sand clone had? Gaara gave him a questioning look. Technically yes. We have wasted half a day, he said as he grabbed his head in frustration. Gaara gave him an amused look and said, Come with me, Matsuri. The final part of the task is for Naruto and Hanabi alone. He left the scroll on the table for them and left with Matsuri. Naruto walked over to the scroll and opened it with his annoyance in clear view. He read over it and blinked a few times in stunned shock. He read over it again and the scroll slipped from his hands. The metal rod that the scroll was bound to hit the pavement with a loud clang as a gust of wind blew. No way. Even I might die if I do that, he said soullessly. Hanabi walked over in confusion and picked up the scroll. Present Hanabi to the Toad Sage Elders to see which type of animal her chakra leans towards. And? What's so bad about that? She asked him in confusion. Naruto's head turned very slowly toward her with his gaze showing he was still in shock. You have no idea. The food there is horrible. They beat me to a blood pulp for even asking about Konohamaru, and now I have to take you there for chakra animal testing. If you aren't a toad type, then they're gonna kill me, he stated.
That's it for this video. I hope you all enjoyed the video. Don't forget to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and follow me on my other social media accounts. Anime God here, and I'm signing off.